Welcome back to episode 111 of Warriors Den. Today's guest is Jacob Hogge. Now, as some of you may know, this is not always about martial arts, but also interesting people who we can have awesome dialogue with. Now, Jacob is a lover of philosophy, Catholic theologian, and previous student of mine. He is currently studying for a master's degree in theological studies and has his own podcast and entertainment network where he theologically commentates on politics, culture, and religion with cringy millennial twist. That's his words. You can follow him on Apple Podcasts and YouTube at Good Sheep and on Instagram and TikTok, though I give him some words for the TikTok. Anyways, at Good Sheep 94. He has also investigated himself locally in favor of Vancouver's Freedom Convoy protests. So if you're listening elsewhere in the world, I'm sure you saw about the Canadian protests. And if you want to check his weekly coverage on that at BC Border Alliance, if you're listening to this in the far future, that may or may not still be a thing, just some thoughts. And I'm keeping this short today because it is a long episode and we are all over the place on a variety of topics. I apologize for that, but as you know, my brain name is all over the place on these topics. To give you an idea about Jacob and what we talked about, here is a little clip of the podcast where we talk about protests, politics, religion, and philosophy the day after Russia decided to invade Ukraine. Fun times. Here's a little clip from the podcast before we jump right into sponsors and the episode. Enjoy.
I would say, please, the first thing everyone should do is to really sit down and think about what makes you you. Who are you? What are you? What does it mean to be you and to fulfill those things? I think freedom is essential for that. And you need to hold everybody who puts themselves above you or whoever you put above yourself to those standards of allowing you to be exactly who you are, because it's exactly who they are. A human being.
Thank you for listening to the Warriors Den podcast. This podcast is brought to you by Urban Tactics Krav Maga, turning lambs into lions since 2013. If you like this podcast and our content, make sure you support us in the many various ways you can. The easy and free ways start with liking, subscribing, following, and leaving a positive review wherever you may be listening or watching. You can also follow us on social media, on Facebook, Instagram at Urban Tactics Krav Maga, and Twitter at Urban Tactics KM. You can also follow us on YouTube and Rumble at Urban Tactics Krav Maga. Another great way to support this podcast, as well as our other content, is to check out our blog at www.utkmblog.com. Here you can check out our weekly curriculum, our various blog posts, and general ideas about Krav Maga and self-defense. For those of you feeling generous, you can also click on the Support Us tab and send donations our way so we can continue providing the awesome content you love. And for those who would like a little more for their money, you can check out www.utkmu.com and learn Krav Maga and self-defense online as we teach it at our school. You can check out the various levels of curriculum with monthly or annual subscriptions and learn Krav Maga so that you too can walk in peace. Small disclaimer, UTKMU is meant to supplement your regular Krav Maga self-defense or martial arts training in person with qualified instructors and is not a substitute for in-person real training. And for those of you who want to look as good as I know you feel, you can always check out www.utkmshop.com where you can check out and buy the latest UTKM merch from us. Warning, wearing UTKM merch will not turn you from a lamb to a lion. To start your transformation from lamb to lion, you must start your training journey today. Stay consistent and never give up wherever you may be. Side effects of wearing UTKM merch may be chronic bouts of kicking ass, feeling good, and learning to walk in peace. And of course, if you are in the Metro Vancouver area, come train with us in person. Sign up at www.urbantacticskm.com. I would love to help you on your journey from lamb into lion. And now, back to the episode. Krav Maga is not just a self-defense system, it is a way of life. Warriors Den is a podcast for Kravists, fighters, martial artists, warriors, politicians, and general citizens. Consider this. The society that separates scholars from its warriors will have its thinking done by cowards and its fighting done by fools. Lucidity. Your host, Jonathan Fader, talks to guests in an open and uncensored format about their fights, their philosophies, and their lives. No topic is taboo, and the conversation may start in one place and end in another. As the quote suggests, you cannot separate the warrior from the politics and the world around them, as a true warrior must be a student in all forms of art and science.
You're listening to The Warrior's Day. Brought to you by Urban Tactics Krav Maga, turning lambs into lions.
So, welcome back. I am here with Jacob Hogge, a former student and a proud member of a small fringe minority.
That's right.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. There's a lot happening right now.
For those who don't know, we are recording this the morning after Russia attacked Ukraine.
Yeah.
So there's some historical context.
Well, what's the date today? February 21st? 20th?
It says how much I know. 24th.
24th. Wow. Okay, I was way off.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we're gonna go long on this one, but
Yeah.
let's just start with, because I like to give some context, and
Yeah.
because you were, for unfortunately a brief period of time,
Yeah, I
a
was.
Krav Maga student. What originally brought you to Krav Maga?
Well, what originally brought me, so I had gone through a kick of.
Closer
Sorry. I'm scared because there's no pop filter here,
yeah,
frankly.
yeah.
So I'm afraid of making all those pop sounds.
Yeah.
I have an audio background, so that's what I'm afraid of.
This thing is amazing. It cuts a lot of stuff out.
Yeah. I could go in on the Zoom devices, but I won't. That's not what we're here for. So I had gone on an Art of Manliness kick, actually. Fell in love with that blog years and years ago. It was about maybe 7 years ago that I got really interested into that blog. And I loved how it laid out just this this criteria of foundations for what it means to be a man, right? Because in our culture, at least in my generation as a millennial, it's like, well, you're not really taught all of that
There's
stuff.
no such thing as men.
No, exactly, right? And so I just got really into setting my priorities straight. Like, what do I want to be as a man, and how does that life look like? So it started a lot with just getting my diet in order. I did keto, and making sure I'm sleeping well, all this sort of stuff. But the first real thing that I wanted to train myself on was strength training. So I started with strength training, progressive overload, right? The Mark Rippetoe starting strength stuff, that kind of thing. And I was feeling really good about it. I was getting a good routine going there. And so I thought, okay, well, this is good. I'm making progress. I'm not quite at my strength goals yet, but I'm loving the vibe here.
Yeah.
And so what's next? Well, I really wanted to learn how to fight, because part of the philosophy of being a man is being able to protect and provide. And let's start with the essentials, right? Get rid of all of these comforts we have in Western civilization. If all of that fades away, what can I do?
Can you live in a hole and fight off a bear?
No, I couldn't at the time. I still couldn't, frankly. So that's why I did some research into what martial arts or fighting practices were the most efficient in doing the job I want to do, which is protect, right? And just from my research, I found that Krav was a incredible foundation to build. I had plans, after getting a black belt or something in Krav, I was going to go
Everyone does.
BJJ and Muay Thai. Everyone does, right? And so I just looked into, and at this time, because of my religious background, I admire Israel, right? As a Christian, I admire Israel. I've been following the IDF, right? So I wanted to find because I knew Krav originated in that country, right? I wanted to find someone with experience, someone with that background, and that's how I found you online.
Woot.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how I joined you, and pretty restricted in terms of the schedule at my level. I think there's only 2 days or evenings.
Unfortunately, that's still the case.
Yeah.
Well, we have more classes now, but it's Vancouver is an interesting market.
Yeah. Well, you've moved. You're out of where you were on East Hastings now, right?
No.
No, you're still there?
I started there. It's a friend's gym.
Okay.
Since there used to be 2 owners, now there's one, and still there. and Vancouver is a very expensive city, and Krav Maga is not being the most popular thing because apparently most Vancouverites still think you don't need to learn to defend
Yeah.
yourself. And then the athletic people are drawn towards competitive stuff like jiu-jitsu, which I don't blame them. I do jiu-jitsu. It's
Yeah.
super fun.
Yeah.
Um, there has never, to my knowledge, been an overly successful Krav Maga gym in this city. And
Mm.
it's not just about marketing or location, it's about demand. The demand's not in this city as compared to other people. I suspect it's going to go through the roof
Mm.
as
Yeah.
crime is weirdly going up in this city for
Yeah.
reasons I'm not entirely sure. And
Lockdowns, man. People are going crazy.
yeah, it could be mental health is probably, and
Yeah.
also the tension in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked about it on the podcast before. I had some people coming in who are not the same ideological minds as, let's
Yeah.
say, us. We're not identical by any means, but
Yeah. Yeah.
and they start hearing how I talk about violence and the reality of culture and all this stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and they just like you can tell they're
Yeah.
bleeding heart liberals, modern
Yeah.
bleeding heart, because I don't like that term too much because classical liberalism is fine, but
Yeah.
the modern stuff has lost its mind, and they just
Yeah.
leave because they're like, oh my god, he said mean things.
Yeah, no, people are so. This is what I'm having with so many people, even close people. It's like we're so used to the comfort that we associate comfort with human rights,
Yeah.
right? It's like these comforts and these luxuries that we have in Western civilization, we see them as inherent to our experience as human beings. And once someone like you,
Yeah.
like that's part of the reason why I love coming to your classes, was because of the things you had to say.
Yeah.
I found ourselves very philosophically aligned in a lot of ways, and just you woke us all up to, this is what's going to happen if you defend yourself in Canada. You
Yeah.
could get arrested and you could go to court, right? It's
Yeah.
like these are the realities,
Yeah.
and these are the things that most
Don't
people nowadays don't think
They
about.
don't even want to hear it.
No.
It's still, I was talking. Who did I? I was talking to a couple high-profile Israeli Krav Maga guys in the previous episodes of Kfir Itzhaki and Yaela Elishar, and it's just like the perception of what Krav Maga is globally is it's got a bit of a black eye, and there's a lot of misconceptions, and people think like in Kfir's case, he was talking. He was in one of the hardcore units, and he had head trauma.
Mm.
And he took out from that unit the insane drills they used to do. Well, people see those drills and it's used to promote Krav Maga, but the reality is when you bring science into this, you can't get that kind of head trauma all the time and kick the shit out of each other. It's not practical, and you get same or similar results without training that hardcore. But you get people walking in the door, they're like, "Why are you talking?" Like, because you're probably here for 3 months
Yeah.
and you need to know principles and concepts because you're not going to be here long enough to get good at the techniques. That's just reality. People don't want to hear that. That's the truth. But because, part of our modern culture is we've been swept up in this, if you believe you can do, sort of. There's truth to that, but there's also a lie to that. And the whole like be happy and duh. But when you start hearing about, well, actually humans need adversity to survive, and you need to work within what your like sort of bell curve of where you're at as a human. And I've been talking about this stuff for a long time, but we've just the pop culture has been sold this fluffy bullshit. And when you tell people the truth about, hey, if you weren't a champ when you were young, it's not impossible to become a champ when you're old, but let's think about this for a second. And it does happen, and we all look at the exceptions to the rules, but that's the exceptions to the rules. And everyone thinks they're the exceptions to the rules until,
Yeah.
but they haven't shown anyone they are.
Yeah.
So
It's funny how these progressive types, what did you call them? These crybaby liberals. That's what I call them.
bleeding heart
Bleeding heart
liberals.
liberals.
It's a term no one uses anymore.
They're so adamant about the science.
Yeah.
And yet they're so willing to deny simple scientific facts like, men have a Y chromosome,
Yeah.
and that produces lots of testosterone
Now,
and other biological factors and
yeah.
so forth. Right?
Contextually, Jacob is a devout Christian. I mean, devout. And historically, I have trouble with devout religious people. But Jacob, you're such a wonderful person who's
Oh.
open-minded. So it's like,
I am.
yeah, super modest too. And you believe in the science, and it just shows you can do both.
Yeah.
I mean, we can get in the weeds on that one later, but
Yeah.
it's
Well, let's do it. Yeah.
it's interesting that the ideas that people have in their heads about other people that are patently false.
Yeah.
and I'm guilty of this myself too. And if you have conversations with people,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
not comment section,
Exactly.
conversations. Like I made a decision a while ago during COVID. I'm not engaging in comment section on social media.
Mm.
And I'm doing what a friend of mine does. He just puts stories, just the stories. And I had
That's what I've been doing
yeah,
actually. Yeah.
it's much more enjoyable use of social media. And
And
I,
it's only there for 24 hours. It goes away,
yeah,
and
well,
it's like,
yeah.
yeah,
And I had the revelation. It's because those not so nice people who think they're right are only commenting because they want it permanently there and they want other people to see their virtual signaling and they want other people to see how
mm,
smart they are or what stances they are. The moment you take it away from that public forum and they have to DM you, they're
yeah,
crickets. And especially someone like me or you, I'm sure you have the same thing. Is people know they DM me and I don't agree with what they're saying, they're gonna get like a book,
yeah,
and people can't keep up
yeah.
with that, so they're like,
It's
I'm
this.
not dealing
No,
with
seriously, and it's
it.
because I bet you take every word that they send you seriously, right? Like that's the pattern I've noticed
Yeah.
is that when someone messages me or comments on my post or something, it's like, okay, I'm going to pay attention to every single word you say, and I'm going to address it and respond to it. And what I find is that oftentimes, if it's someone who disagrees with me on the far other side of the spectrum, I'm not owed that same courtesy. It's just generalizations, blah blah blah, fall back on talking points, etc.
Well, in my observation, and I'm bad at this. I talk down to my audience sometimes and the world. It's not good, but it's difficult when wherever you are in the world, if you have a wide and somewhat deep, I'm not that deep, but wide knowledge base on a wide variety of topics,
Mm.
you can draw from all of that
Yeah,
to talk about one thing.
yeah,
And a lot of people lose you when you draw from multiple topics. COVID's
yeah,
actually a really interesting example because we listened to one type of expert. Well, the experts we were listening to were master administrator media people, not master researchers or this and that.
right.
They're become experts in administrative stuff, medical administration, which is not the people we should be listening to. They ignored the economists. They ignored all these other experts that we're supposed to be listening to because if you pigeonhole into one thing, it you don't get the broad, hey, you're going to damage this. Hey, you're going to damage that. No, we're not. We have to do this. And it got so narrow-minded a response. Of course, then we find out that it seems that Hail Hydra is my
Yeah,
new thing.
yeah. Honk honk, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That one MP, Canadian MP said honk honk, which is a classic trucker thing, was
Yeah,
Hail Hitler. And it's
yeah.
like, what is wrong with you?
I laughed. There's things there's certain things you hear that are just so outlandish. It's
Yeah.
like I can't even be offended by that. It's just funny.
To me, regardless of whether I've learned this, if you're only going to stick to talking points as a politician, regardless of what political party you're in, you don't deserve to be there
No, no.
at this point because you're not taking your constituents serious, you're not taking your fellow parliamentarians seriously, you're not taking anyone seriously, and either you don't know anything, which means you're not qualified to be there, or your party platform is full of shit and you
Yeah,
don't want people to find that out,
yeah.
you know.
And that's on both the right and the
Yeah,
left.
absolutely.
I would say slightly less so from the
At
conservatives
this moment in time.
at this moment in time.
Yeah.
But did you watch any of the Senate debate?
A little bit. My wife was glued to that, and I'm just like
Interesting.
maybe chill because it was giving her a panic attack.
Well, the
But
number one difference I saw
yeah,
in that was that the leader, I think he was the leader of the CSG. First of all, I didn't know that Senates actually had their own kind of
yeah.
groups,
Canadian Senate
right?
is weird.
It's super weird. But the CSG is so there's the independent senators, which
Yeah,
create like the bulk of them. They're supposed to be quote unquote
neutral,
neutral.
which
Well,
they historically have been
historically have been,
reasonably
but
so.
Trudeau's placed like over 50% of them,
Yeah,
right? So,
yeah.
anyways, that aside, the CSG, the Canadian Senate group, is this also self-proclaimed in the middle
Mhm.
nonpartisan group, but they solely were created because they didn't see true diversity in
Yeah,
the ISG,
yeah.
right? So, and what I noticed is that the leader of the CSG, he was I forget his name, Plot,
I,
we're
I don't know.
plop something, you know. But anyways, he actually had lots of nuance
Yeah,
and no talking points. Like
yeah.
actually went into like
Details.
legal
Yeah,
philosophy and stuff like that. It's like this is the first of all, like our senators, if do you have any Americans
Oh,
listening in?
lots. I
Yeah,
actually, I'll
yeah,
just pause it there. I'll take a
sure,
step back,
sure.
and of course, if you know more, because I'm not
Yeah,
that knowledgeable on the legal definitions, but
yeah,
we have a representative democracy in Canada,
yeah.
right? MPs. The popular vote does not matter from the purpose of the system,
Mm-hmm.
though it should be an indicator. Like conservatives had the popular vote last time, so when people argue about the popular vote in Canada or America, I'm like, sorry, not how the system works.
Right.
But you should look at that and be like, ooh, that maybe we need to be less partisan. So you vote your MP who hypothetically is supposed to represent your constituents. Now, here's
Yeah,
the thing: as a representative democracy, no matter what form it takes, because it can be like a republic, it can be a Senate. I don't know all the names, but it can be that, and they're supposed to do two things simultaneously: prevent mob rule, because the public doesn't know certain things.
yeah,
So that's where they're supposed to step in and be like, I'm not voting for that. But they're also supposed to represent their
yeah,
constituents. Now, what's happened in Canada and a lot of countries around the world is the MPs don't really represent the people anymore on most topics.
no,
They vote with the party.
yeah. They
And
represent their party
yeah,
leader.
which I despise
Yeah,
as a hardline stance. Like it makes
yeah,
sense if you need to get stuff done, but when the conservative leadership in the past, liberal leadership now, 100%, NDP, I don't know where they're at. These are the political parties in Canada are saying you must vote with the party or we're kicking you out. I think
yeah,
that should be illegal. I think you
yeah.
cannot get kicked out of your party for voting with your constituents, and they need to stop
I agree.
because it creates this thing where the party leader now, special interest groups only need to get access to the party leader. Party leader tells its people what to do, and you don't vote against because it's political suicide in most countries to become an independent person. Now, it's happened in Canada where there's independent MPs, but they're extremely popular with their constituents.
Yeah,
They're strong community leaders, right? So you have your MPs, and mostly they vote. Then we have the Senate, which, and my details may be wrong in this, but one of Harper, the conservative prime minister for a while's biggest quote scandals was
yes,
he was trying to get rid of the Senate. And this was partially because Canadians were like, why do we have unelected people who are appointed? Our Senate is appointed, doing nothing. They were literally not showing up, not doing anything, getting lifelong pensions,
yeah,
not getting involved in anything. They would
yeah,
greenlight anything that came through, and the few senators that were there. And so they censured Harper, and it's like, ooh, a big scandal. It's like, no, no, no. He was actually doing what people said is we don't want a Senate that's doing
yeah,
nothing. Now,
yeah,
since then, the Senate's kind of got off its ass and is starting to like show
yeah,
up a little bit more, and they've actually. I'm glad we have it because they actually have checked Trudeau's power a couple times
yeah,
now,
yeah.
and uh, the idea, by the way, and this used to apply to the idea of in universities, what's the word when they get indefinite pay for
Oh, tenure.
tenure? The idea behind tenure or an appointed person is that you can actually, it's easier to be nonpartisan because you're not worried about the election cycle. So
Right.
it's a legitimate argument. So
Mm,
for tenureship, it's you get your tenureship, don't have to be worried about getting fired or being controversial. You can research whatever you want, and it's valid if you've shown to be a consistent person. The problem with some of the senators now is they're being appointed partisan, like one of the BC senators, an Asian gentleman who was accused of having
Yon,
serious
yeah.
ties to the Communist Party, and people are
Oh,
like,
really? I didn't know that.
"Ugh,"
Crazy.
you know,
Like what Communist
detail
Party
of China.
of China?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
yeah, he's
Okay, okay.
pro
Yeah.
China kind, which
Okay.
I think as a senator you need to be pro your country
Yeah.
first. End of
Absolutely.
story. So now historically the senators have been somewhat partisan, and that's why you saw more debate because they're not going to lose
Yeah.
their job. I
Yeah.
think they have to quit. They have to quit. They can't just
Mm,
be pushed out once they're appointed.
yeah.
So it,
There is a retirement age. Like they're
yeah,
they're
I think
forced to
so. Yeah,
retire. Yeah. And I think this
which the U.S. desperately needs.
yeah, maybe. I like a lot of the things that the US system is. Like just the fact that you vote for your House representative
Yeah,
and your Senate representative
yeah,
and the president. So you're voting for three people, as
yeah.
far as I understand. And whereas here you're voting for one person who, by proxy, selects your country's prime minister, who gets executive powers, and you have no say whatsoever
Mm-hmm.
in the Senate. Just the prime minister just nominates and is appointed
Mm-hmm.
by the governor
I had
general,
a
right? Which, in my opinion, is actually was one of Harper's greatest failures. Sure, he wanted to get rid of the Senate.
yeah.
Good on him, but he couldn't. So what should he have done before leaving? he should have filled the vacant seats. We had
Yeah.
so many vacant seats,
Yeah.
and that allowed Trudeau to just fill them up
Yeah.
himself, right?
Well, for those who don't know, Trudeau invoked the emergency power, which a lot of legals, like non-liberal, crazy people, most legal experts in this country said, "What
What
the
are
hell
you
did you
doing?
just
Yeah,
do?" And that's not okay.
unbelievable.
And after he denounced it the other day, he said, "Oh, apparently we already had laws I could have used to deal with this."
Which we were telling you from the beginning.
Yeah, and so the suspicion is that he was told the Senate's going to vote it down,
Yeah,
and so politically he basically, or the Senate is a bit cowardly in my opinion because they don't like voting things down. They're just like, take a look at this again, and they pass it back down. They
right.
don't outright say no to this. We're
Well, the
not voting
process
for
is
this.
normally to do that as part of the
Yeah.
process, right? Come to rewrite this thing, take a look, blah blah blah.
But they do it in a like, basically, we're not going to vote for this, but we won't publicly say we're not going to vote for this. So
Mm.
hey, rework this, and usually that's the end of it. Bill
Mm.
C-10, he's trying to shove through still the internet censorship bill or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've looked into
I
that
just
one.
don't think it's going to pass.
No, like, yeah,
Um,
hopefully not.
sorry, I lost track of where we were.
Well, the thing I want to say about the Emergencies Act is
Yeah.
it doesn't matter at this point if it works out, because there's so many different theories and ways you could go out about analyzing the situation we're in, depending on what side of the opinion you're on, right?
Mm.
If you're someone who is in favor of Trudeau, if you're part of the liberal cult, who
Most of
thinks,
them are actually not in favor for him, just the policies. To
right,
be clear at
yeah.
this point.
Well, if you're in favor of it, oh, now I'm losing my train of
Yeah.
thought. But if you're in favor of it and it's you think, oh, it was a perfectly established thing, he was in his right. But now we have powers essentially, or the deputy prime minister wanted to have some of these emergency powers put in place permanently, right? And so now this sets precedent for what else can what else can the prime minister in the future call an emergency act for, right?
Yeah.
And if you're in my favor, well, it can go one of two ways. Either this exposes the absolute corruption.
Oh, his government has already been exposed. This is why I'm so
Yeah,
shocked he's
yeah.
still in. I wrote a bunch of senators. I'm like,
Yeah.
I wanted to make this clear that this person in charge in most other countries would have democratically been removed from power.
Yeah.
I'm not saying overthrow it's democratic. You guys have the power. The Liberal Party has the power to remove him from themselves. It would cause a vote of no confidence and an election. But in that case, if the party removes him, he's gone.
Mhm.
And to me, that's the only chance the Liberals have at this point. If they, as a party, remove their leader,
Yeah.
they can do it.
Yeah.
And or you vote in no confidence, which this is one thing more than Canadians hate than anything. It's an election. Canadians hate elections because for us it can happen between 18 months and 4 years. Depending on how the politics is going. And why allegedly Jagmeet Singh, of the head of the NDP party, voted to agree with the Emergency Act was that quietly behind closed doors they had rigged it to be a vote of no confidence. They didn't tell anyone else.
Mm.
So that it was basically, if this gets voted down, it's a vote of no confidence. So Jagmeet Singh, being, I think he's a coward, quite frankly,
Oh, yeah.
instead of publicly saying, I'm voting this down, and this government who has no respect for this public, every time he doesn't get what he wants, he throws a tantrums and calls an election. It's disgraceful. I cannot in good conscience vote for this, and I'm letting you know that it's on Trudeau that we're having another election. He should have done that. Instead, he voted for it. And allegedly, I've heard rumors that the NDP have had it with him because he's a weak leader.
Well, how are you into conspiracy theories?
Well, define conspiracy theory.
Or conspiracy realities, right? So like there's this whole thing now about Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum.
I don't think that's
right?
a conspiracy theory.
No,
when
not at
Klaus
all.
Schwab has publicly said
We've
what he
penetrated the half of our cabinet.
That's
right?
not a conspiracy.
And you can it's so funny. So I did my own digging, just casual. I'm not like an InfoWars guy or anything, but like I went on the WEF.org website.
They're saying what they want.
And it's just, it's right there. But what's interesting is you can go into all their subpages, right? They have our members, quote unquote, partners, organizations, blah, blah, blah. But you won't find a really easily accessible, like, here are our personalities that have come in and graduated, per se, from our group. There's no page like that. What you have to do is you have to manually. I've had to manually Google Justin Trudeau World
DuckDuckGo.
Economic Forum, right?
DuckDuckGo is
Or
better.
or DuckDuckGo. Yeah, actually, it depends. On my phone, I haven't switched to DuckDuckGo, but on my Safari, I'm used DuckDuckGo. Anyways, and that is the only way where you'll find a wef.org/partners/Jagmeet Singh
Yeah.
or Trudeau, right?
Yeah,
Or
that's something other
yeah,
people don't know is when the liberals in our country or the Democrats in the U.S. are screaming about foreign interference, I'm sorry, stop working with
Yeah.
privately
yeah,
special interest groups
yeah,
as a politician.
yeah,
We need to
yeah.
stop that because all
How
these
much funding have we received from China?
well, Trudeau's prior to getting elected from 2000 to 2016, and this is public information, not conspiracy. It was published in the newspapers in Canada. His Trudeau Foundation, which is how they do it. They go through the foundations to skirt election laws and campaign financing, and these loopholes need to stop. If you're running for office or you're in office, done. You have no interaction with foreign interest, anything. I don't give a shit. Well, no, shut up. No, because it's just too easy for them to be corrupted. From 2013 to 2016, when he got elected, it went from no foreign donations to 2/3 of the foundation's income in 3-year period.
Mm,
That's weird.
yeah.
So, and nobody seems to care. Canadians just don't seem to care about the corruption of their leadership.
Yeah.
And it's insane.
And it really is on us. Like, I have spent most of this time under Trudeau's quote unquote democracy.
Yeah.
Not being mad at him, not being upset with him.
Well, I've been upset the whole time.
Well,
I had a panic attack when he got elected.
Well, really, which time? The first time?
The first time I saw what he was going to do.
Well, his quote, that his admiration for China's dictatorship because they can turn the economy on a dime, that was the day I became political, actually. Yeah. I think I was 20, 21 years old, something like that. And I was not political before that. That was the day I became political. I'm like, that, I could see that's not right.
Yeah.
But my problem is with our fellow Canadians, because we're the ones who elected him. Mm. We are. Right, we all as a people, as a nation, like, we give politicians that power, right? And so what I find is that this is why the real work happens on the ground with all of us speaking our minds and engaging with each other in conversation, because we have a real crisis of values, of priorities. So you and I were talking about this earlier this week, and this kind of the thread that I see common throughout all the subjects that we're talking about on this episode is this issue of priorities, prioritization. Yeah. What is the priority here in terms of politics? What is the main? Let's start with the fundamentals. Like, what is the basic job of any authority? Mm. Whether that's your parent or your boss or your government leader, like, what is the foundation of that? Well, the first priority is to make sure that the people underneath you are able to live as human beings. Yeah. Because what are we before we're a son, before we're an employee, before we're a Canadian, right? We're a human being, right? So what does it mean to be a human being? Well, I think there's lots of things that come into it. So what we have to do is we have to strip away all these different layers of clothing. Really, we need to get nude with philosophy and values here. What are you before there's government, before you have a job, before you're a parent? What does it mean to be you? Well, it means that you have free choice. Instinctively, like, you just, as a human being,
unless you're Sam Harris, who's like, you have no free choice.
Right.
I think he's so nuts.
Right. Well, there's some truth. I mean, there's some scientific value there, right? We're driven by emotional responses, chemical reactions in our brain, and so forth. Yeah. But I have a more spiritual approach to that, right? Where I think those two work together. But nonetheless, I think what we have the freedom to choose what we want to do. Okay, we have the freedom to take care of our health how we want to. We have the freedom to maneuver our bodies in ways that we want to. I would say, and this is a great example, is that there's a limit, though, to that freedom where you don't infringe upon other people's freedoms. So that's where I'm getting at here, is that if you're in a position of authority, your first primary job is to protect those inalienable rights. That's why we call them inalienable rights. I think what's interesting about...
Do we in Canada, though?
Well, here's the thing. Here's what people don't notice, though, about the Charter, and I can't quote it word for word, but it does articulate in some fashion that these rights and freedoms we have don't come to us from the Charter. they pre-exist the charter. The charter simply exists to defend those rights and
Yeah.
freedoms
And
that
for
we
those who
have.
don't know, Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms is like our
Is
Constitution,
like the
although it
Constitution.
was written in the 80s because apparently we like the Queen too much until
Yeah,
then.
yeah, so,
Of England.
yeah. And speaking of the Constitution right now, or to put this into kind of our situation in the context of an American listening.
Yeah.
Right now, we have because our charter was written in the 80s, and because of our COVID restrictions, mandates, and so forth, we have the last living drafter
Oh, yeah.
of the Charter of Rights and
Brian,
Freedoms, Peckford,
yeah.
who is suing the government. So it's like imagine Americans, one of your founding fathers still around is watching what your government's doing, infringe upon your Second Amendment
And
rights.
I listened to an interview of him with Jordan Peterson, and he
Yeah.
was like, because what they'll try to argue and what they're doing in the States is, well, like, you don't know their intentions. Like, I helped write it. Don't tell me what my intentions were. Like, I know what our intentions were. So it's a serious thing. And I wanted to sort of just a little tangent there for a second, because, you know, if someone's only listening to this, because I'm sure you're going to share this and people who've never heard of me will listen to it, is I don't know. I mean, I'm very politically, as people who know me know, but, you know, a lot of my guests, I just talk Krav Maga. I just talk self-defense. I just talk martial arts. And sometimes we branch in. Some people are not comfortable talking about this. And a lot of people, so this is my perspective, is that, you know, don't talk politics and religion.
Oh, my two favorite subjects.
Right? Yeah.
Literally.
And I can talk religion with some people like you. I have no problem with, but a lot of people, I'm not talking to them about it because they're just like, I almost punched this Hasidic Jew once in Israel because he said the reason we won wars was because angels stopped the bullets. I'm like, fuck you. You know how many people got shot? Like, you psychopath. Like,
right.
But anyways, it's that if we take it back to a broader thing of like inalienable human rights, one of those things is the right to safety and security through self-defense. Now, if we take Maslow's a hierarchy of needs, right? Safety, security, and love and belonging. It's all at the bottom, and without those, it's hard to be a stable human being. And so, and then tie into that being a Jew, and a lot of Jews, I don't get along with Jews because I think they have become elitists, upper class, removed from the average person in North America. So I don't share the same perspectives with them. It's that
you do talk down to us, though.
Yeah, of course, right? That's a John thing, mostly. So people don't want to talk about this stuff, and to me, it's like we're not living in little 150-person villages anymore, guys.
No.
And even if you were, guess what? You mind your own little business, and you didn't know that the barbarian tribe is coming down because you don't care about the rest of the world, and you're dead.
Yeah.
And so from a self-defense perspective, for me, it's really important. You don't have to go into the weeds, but you need to have a basic understanding of what's going on politically in your country and your neighboring countries. Imagine being in Ukraine right now and being like, I have no idea what's going on, and then boom, jets are flying.
Yeah.
So for me, part of self-defense is understanding the world around you and different opinions and different perspectives and cultural values and political ideology, because you need to be prepared. The Jews in 1930s Germany that keyed in real quick got the fuck out, and they lived.
Yeah.
And the Jews that said, no, everything is fine, society is working great, no, they won't go to that next step, dead. Now, when you make I think you have to be careful with the words you use, because people get really, like, if you use the word Nazi, it's very triggering.
Right.
Now, first of all, I don't like everyone just throwing around the word Nazi personally.
No.
I compared recently, as soon as they implemented these lockdowns and the passports, I'm like, we're going into the Nazi realm now.
Yeah.
Now, I said Nazi to be inflammatory because that's me.
Yeah.
But I could have said fascist.
Yeah.
Because it is fascist.
Yeah.
When we start doing that. And people
specifically
just
with passports. I wouldn't say with mandates, but specifically with passports.
With the othering of
because
people.
Because that's the part of fascism is you need to other someone and use government forces to suppress the other.
I mean, communism does it too, but if everyone is one group, then there is no other. So it's a little bit different.
Which is what the mandates did, right? Just mandates without passports essentially just suppressed everyone, right? And you could say there was still another class of people where the governments who were not following these rules were kind of elitizing themselves.
Yeah, and so if we take a look at Canada, sort of back to what I was saying, people like to be hands off.
Yeah.
Like, leave me alone. Even you have to understand how much of a dickhead you have to be to get all of the conservative groups who don't always like each other together to protest like they did. Because normally conservative groups, they're like, leave me alone. Leave me
Yeah.
alone. I don't want to do it. Like, leave me alone. And you see how when conservatives get together and protest, it's effective. When
Oh,
left-leaning
it's
people
beautiful.
get together, it's just a bunch of crazy people
It's
screaming
ugly.
nonsense. And
Exactly.
and and and, and if people need to be more, the idea of civic duty and being politically engaged, or at least informed. You don't have to be engaged because I honestly can't deal with a lot of the politician people.
Yeah.
I had a conversation once with a conservative riding leader about Maxime Bernier
Mm-hmm.
and why he should have won. And then you
Yeah.
find out Andrew Scheer is WEF.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that makes total sense that they railroaded Maxime Bernier when he was running for the
You
thing
know.
of several years ago. But he's like, Maxime Bernier is no, no, no. I'm like, but I like his policy ideas. And
Yes.
they're like, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. We,
Yeah.
we can't have such a person in this place. And it's like, you do realize in Canada, increasingly, most conservatives are moving libertarian.
Yeah.
You realize that. And you
Yeah.
guys are pushing what's called a red Tory, which is more liberalized conservative. And it gets
Right.
confusing because there's political ideology and there's political party.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, that's a good place to add. What to you do you, because there's Conservative Party of Canada, but
Yeah.
if I go to the States, they'll say I'm a conservative and I vote Republican. So
Yeah.
that's a little example of
Yeah.
political ideology versus. So
Yeah.
what do you consider, like, what do you mean, what's your definition when you hear conservative?
Well, conservative to me means right wing, and it means right wing values, such as prioritizing first our fundamental freedoms and rights. Okay, before we get into the cushy stuff, and in fact, before the cushy stuff is okay. You know, all these social programs, they're okay, but they come last after first fundamental freedoms. Then second is getting out of debt, being fiscally conservative.
Hmm.
And then after that, okay, yeah, let's do social programs. So that to me is a conservative perspective where we're preserving these core values that uh, we're conserving, right? Conservative. We're conserving these core values of what it means to be Canadian from the past, right? We don't want to just keep, because that's the pattern of non-conservative, of liberal, of left leaning, is it's literally like the reverse almost, right? They'll flip the switch. They'll say all of these social programs, they're human rights,
Yeah.
right? Education, public health care. Yeah, it's, guess what? I know this might be hard to hear. I know not for you, but public health care is not a human right.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not your you just by you being conceptualized in the womb, you are not obligated to receive health care from someone else as they work and get paid X wage, right? Like that's not a human right.
And by the way, I'm not going to get too much into it. I would much rather pay less taxes, have less public health care, and pay someone on the side to get better health care than I'm getting now.
Yeah, and
personally.
It's funny to hear all of these people freak out about mandates
Yeah.
and vaccination rates.
Lose some weight.
Yeah, well, what I'm getting at here is that people are saying we need to vaccinate everyone or remove people from the public system of healthcare because they're putting a burden on our healthcare system.
Obese people.
But now you're arguing for a privatized healthcare system.
Yeah, well, that's
right?
why that's the thing. When Quebec said we want to tax the unvaccinated, I'm like, that's
Yeah.
gonna. My wife was freaking out. I'm like, it's gonna fail.
Yeah.
Because
And it did.
if they do
Thank
that,
God.
it just killed the argument for public health care
Yeah.
in Canada.
Yeah.
And there are, like, Bonnie Henry is
Yeah.
such a diehard lunatic on her stance about public health care.
Mm.
She has done everything to railroad anyone who doesn't like the healthcare system.
Mm-hmm.
When, let's say, at the start of the pandemic, for example, we have private healthcare in Canada, guys. If you don't know, there's private healthcare.
Yeah.
They just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Okay, and you can still go to public healthcare if you want.
Yeah.
All the private healthcare clinics said, hey, if you're having trouble this is early when the vaccines, like, would love to help you with vaccines. We'd love to help with overflow. And their response was no. And it's like, aren't you telling the public that you're short staffed and don't have enough people and the private healthcare is offering their services?
Yeah.
Nope. Because then they admit that they are incapable of managing. And by the way, I don't know if you saw locally the numbers, the highest that the ERs and ICUs were ever full was during the H1N1 flu, not during COVID.
I didn't see those numbers. Interesting.
Now, you can, devil's advocate, say it's because people weren't getting COVID, weren't going out, that's the reason. But I think that's a bunch of nonsense. I think if the public had been moving around, you would have seen a quicker spike like you did in Sweden, and then it would have been over and it would have been done. And the healthcare system would have been fine. And the dirty little secret about public healthcare is when it's mismanaged,
Yeah.
it falls apart. And
Yeah.
I talked to a lot of nurses and doctors off the record. When they're open, they're like, the system's been broken for a long time.
Right.
And it's the
Yeah.
administrators wrecking it. There's
Totally.
nothing wrong with public health care, but when you run it the way they're doing it,
Yeah.
it's a disaster.
Interesting.
It's getting worse and worse and worse. And you have to fight for your medical treatment now.
Yeah. Well, to answer your previous question more precisely about like where I believe the real conservative lines are,
Yeah.
I think it's with the PPC. It's with Maxime Bernier.
It's just, I wish you could organize better.
And you've said this, like, what a dumb name.
It's the stupidest name. I'm sure it sounds better in French because he is French, but it sounds like a communist party.
Yeah.
And everyone's pointing it out.
Well, the People's Republic of now Canada, right?
It's just, listen, man, this is why a lot of like political insiders don't like him, because he's not very like clever with this stuff. And it's like,
he's not good at winning over people who don't already have these values, right?
So, and for those who don't know, I mean, Pierre Poilievre has been all over the internet. He's a conservative MP. He is talking small government right now, but he still has to win the conservative leadership.
Yeah.
I'll vote for him. Pierre doesn't win the leadership race, I'm out of the Conservative Party. I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
And because as much as you like Maxime, he and I like his policies and his stuff, he's basically going to go to war with the system.
Yeah.
And like metaphorical war, political war, because he wants to get rid of lobbyism. He wants to get rid of these dairy cartels, farming cartels.
Yeah.
And they don't like that because they're the money behind a lot of the politics. And he'll got it. And so he needs to have better political machinery, which is the biggest complaint about him. He has no ability to organize and political machinery. That how is he going to fight this thing when he can't even organize his own MP or his own representatives properly? Right. So that's the criticism. But I think you will see if Pierre Poilievre takes it. And a lot of people have written them and said, if you don't put Pierre in, we're jumping ship.
Yeah. I mean, who else is going to?
Unfortunately, I saw some rumblings.
Yeah.
Jean Charest?
I don't even know who that is.
That's dangerous.
Yeah.
No, he's not a dangerous person, but it's dangerous to Pierre.
It's a dangerous move.
To Pierre.
Okay.
Because he was a former premier of Quebec. He can unify Quebec and he can unify the West because he's a respected political. I butchered his name. He has done well politically before. He knows the system. And he's not openly saying small government like Pierre is starting to. So the machine of the Conservative Party would prefer someone like that than someone like Pierre, who's a young upstart who can, holy God, man, can that guy argue. And they will prefer a candidate like that. And he's high profile.
Yeah.
So all the staunch Conservative Party members want someone like Jean Charest or whatever his name is to run. Not Pierre, because Pierre is going to shake the boat and ruin their pensions, their little slush fund stuff.
Yeah.
And Maxime will really rock the boat more than Pierre would.
Yeah.
So they don't want someone. Here's the thing, guys. The system's broken. Everyone knows it, including the WEF, who's openly saying the World Economic Forum, the system is broken. Fiat currency is broken. We've run our debt. We are totally screwed. We want to change things. Everyone is changing things. All these people like sticking diehard flag, the system. I'm sorry, it's broken. Everybody knows it. The question is, where are we going with our next phase in system? Well, decentralization seems to be the key. But how do you maintain power in decentralization? You have a brainwashed populace.
Yeah.
That's where the elites want to go because they want to maintain their control, versus everybody else wants full city-state decentralization, which works now with technology. And these entrenched party members, these entrenched bureaucrats, what are they called? The shadow
caucus?
No. That's a Canadian thing. That's legit. Shadow caucus is just like the opposing cabinet members.
Okay. The deep state?
Deep state, that's the word I'm looking for. These are people that exist, that have their entire life has been in government, and they don't want it to change because they lose their cushy jobs when you decentralize stuff.
Yeah.
And so what I was saying is that when you realize the monetary system is failing, we can't just keep going into debt. it makes everything worthless. And when you realize that the elites on one way are trying to go one way and the, say, hardcore Bitcoin maximalists are going the other way,
Mm-hmm.
well, what the elites want is, have you ever seen the show The Expanse?
No,
It's a
never
great
heard of
show.
it.
Oh, it's an amazing show. Even if just for entertainment's sake. But you might like it because it has some interesting philosophical questions.
Is it on Netflix?
It's on Amazon Prime.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because I got rid of Netflix,
Yeah.
so
I
it's
don't
on
go that
Amazon.
hardcore with politics. I'm like, I'll watch stuff. But um and on Earth in the future, in this world, the majority of humans live in a handout culture. You basically
Okay.
exist and you
Okay.
get minimum basic income, and that's it.
Yeah.
In order to do anything, even a trade, you have to apply to a lottery. Some people get lucky and get in early. Some people will get lottery just to even get a trade in their 50s. You're basically existing as a human in just above poverty line. And then
Yeah.
you have all the elites running the show and all the people who even just have a trade and have a working job.
Hmm.
And that I see is the model that these elites want to move towards. The because
You'll own nothing and you'll be happy,
yeah, that. But
right?
why? It's because as technology, and it might have been just an unintentional thing, as technology replaces the human need to work, which it will eventually. There's an argument. Well, technology begets more jobs and more technology. To a point, there's always a point. Well, if the population keeps growing and growing and growing, even now, 80% of the population effectively does 20% of the work.
Yeah.
You'll get to a point. Let's say they say we're going to max out at 12 billion people. Let's say it's 12 billion people, and technology does most of the blue collar work. Literally, what are people going to do?
Yeah.
They're not going to do anything. They're going to have nothing to do. And a
Yeah.
bored population is a dangerous population.
Yeah.
And so, how do you prevent this now massive group of the human population that has nothing to do? That's why I think they want to push the metaverse, because it'll give them something to do.
Right.
What do you do with these people?
Huh.
Some people are going to be like, oh, they'll do art. No, they won't. Oh,
Right.
they'll do philosophy. Have you talked to some
Yeah.
people?
No.
No, they won't.
No.
And so, how do you prevent the masses who are jobless from losing their shit and overthrowing the top like they always do? You brainwash them
Mm-hmm.
and you control them and you
Yeah.
micromanage their lives.
Yeah.
And that's where they want to go. And this
Yeah.
is not conspiracy. This is, okay, if you listen to the tech people, what they're saying, if you listen to the economists, what they're saying, you listen to all the people and all the different things,
Mm-hmm.
this is where they're going.
Yeah. You need to listen to all. You have to become a deep expert almost in
Yeah.
all of these, like you were mentioning at the beginning.
Yeah. And it's like, oh, Bitcoin, this. I'm like, hey, guys, the tech bros want crypto. Guess what? We're going to crypto.
Yeah.
Which one? Oh, and guess what? By the way, the governments want digital currency,
Yeah.
which is basically crypto but owned by them.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
going in that way.
Yeah.
This is happening whether you guys like it or not. I don't
Yeah.
care. You don't understand it. I still barely understand it. We're moving in that direction.
Yeah.
What we are seeing now, I'll listen to, like, there's a news breaking points. They're center left in the States, and they're very good, except they're like, culture wars are bullshit. I'm like, no. They're not, because we're at the point where we can't agree on what direction humanity wants to go. I think the idea of a one world government is failed. I think it's impossible. The universal algorithm doesn't work like that.
Right. I agree.
The decentralization, hey, Vancouver wants to be its own independent city state. Great. Surrey wants to be its own independent city state. Toronto wants to be its own city state. And maybe all the regions around it want to be their own little state. Let them. Oh, but what that does is it destroys big government. It destroys these one world governments. It destroys these big organizations that want to control everything. But it's a more productive way. Because guess what? We just realized that economically in COVID, you send all your manufacturing to China, everything shuts down. We're screwed.
Yeah.
And it shows you why decentralization is a point. Every little area should be as reasonably independent as it's able to. Obviously, some places don't have certain resources. Well, that's where you have trade. That's where trade comes in. But as much as you can, grow every region, grow your own food, figure out a way.
Yeah.
Sustainable population. Everyone has something to do that's productive for them.
Yeah.
And then whatever you are lacking, you can trade with other regions.
Mm-hmm.
And if increasingly stuff becomes information based, then an isolated little region has a more ability to trade than ever. Because even if they get embargoed now, physical goods, they can still somewhat survive. It gets more complicated,
Yeah.
obviously. But people are like, oh, I can't imagine that. I'm like, listen, this is what the people at the top on either side are pushing for. It's who has the power in the end. And this is what we're seeing right now is the my joke was, so Emperor Palpatine,
Yeah,
right,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
told 5 people or so, I don't know, there's a list of less than 10 people, let's say, who actually knew about Order 66, kill all the Jedi. He's a handful of people. He's a master Sith Lord. He could kill that many people pretty quickly without them realizing what the hell is going on. Klaus Schwab has been running his mouth on the internet. Oops, cat's out of the bag. They probably actually needed another 10, 20 years of quiet, and
That
they would
long,
have pulled
eh?
it off.
Oh, really?
Yes, because you have to do the whole world, or at least the West,
Yeah.
right? And because they're running their mouth, because they got so egotistical, it's like Hillary Clinton running her goddamn mouth too much.
Yeah.
And people start looking into stuff.
I didn't know what the World Economic Forum
Neither did
was
I.
until Klaus opened his mouth.
If you had
Back
told
in, when
me,
was it, November?
yeah,
I didn't know what it was. I
uh,
thought this was all just like conspiracy
yeah,
theory, nut
exactly.
job thing. Like
Yeah.
I don't touch that stuff. You
Neither
know,
do I.
I stay away from Alex Jones. I don't
Yeah.
like Infowars.
He's
blah,
good
blah,
and
blah,
bad.
right?
I don't listen to him because
Sure.
it's just too much.
But it's just exactly. It's just like, well, I have so much more energy and time and mental power to put into other things. I'm not going to bother with that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But it's like now I see this, guy, this bald dude sitting down of this audience of people, and he starts bragging about how Trudeau he's put Trudeau.
He said he's a good little boy or something.
Yeah,
Good boy.
or Merkel as well.
Yeah.
Or in France and Germany and Canada and the UK and USA. It's like we've penetrated, and he specifically said
Penetrated.
Trudeau. We've penetrated
Cabinets.
half of their cabinets, more than half of their.
Well, he said we
cabinet.
penetrated cabinets all around the world, I think, and we have more.
But
than
he did.
half.
He
Yeah.
singled out Canada.
That should have been okay. We're doing it. It's one of my issues in
Yeah.
Canada. The RCMP, at any point, can investigate a politician for criminal activity. They don't, because they don't see their job as like, well, we don't want to be seen as overthrowing a legitimately democratic government. It's like, no. You're not.
Right.
Your job is to investigate criminal activity. If there's
Yeah.
evidence of criminal activity, you investigate it.
We need checks and balances, and to
And they're
execute
not.
those checks and balances.
Even worse, in the States, the FBI is clearly compromised. They're clearly pushing an agenda that is not apolitical.
Yeah.
Now, the RCMP are not like that,
Right.
but they're just like, we're not investigating politicians unless like the House votes on it. And it's like, no. I'm sorry. You are there. The enforcement branch is there to enforce law reasonably and equally, and you're not doing that. That's actually one of the reasons why society is having problems, because the politically connected, the rich, are not being treated the same, doing crimes sometimes that are worse than what the average person does. Like, objectively, if Hillary Clinton or Trudeau was a private business person getting caught doing all the stuff that they're doing, they would have been seriously investigated. Whether jail or not, probably not. They're wealthy, but they would have been seriously investigated.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's like, no, that's conspiracy theory. And as time goes by, what's the difference between conspiracy and truth in 2020?
Time.
6 months. Now it's
Exactly.
3 months. Now it's 2 months. It's
Yeah.
like, I know people don't want to hear this. Like, again, same thing. I'm not in conspiracy theory. And some like Tim Pool. You know who Tim Pool
Oh
is?
yeah, I watch him every day.
Really? I can't.
Oh
He's
really?
too speculative.
Oh really?
He's too speculative.
Oh okay.
Alex Jones, too speculative.
Oh, I don't think I can't. You can't. I can't stand Alex Jones.
Well, he's crazy.
But I love Tim Pool.
Speculative.
Really, I don't find him very speculative.
He was wrong about so much
What was he wrong about?
during the election, during the accusations of fraud during the Trump stuff.
What was he wrong about?
A lot of it. He's like, well, I'm not saying I could. It may be.
He does talk like that.
It's like, dude,
But
you're
no,
not helping.
No, but the thing I noticed about him though is he was taking people out of that mindset of like it's that he what I heard him say was that no, we can't jump to these conspiracy theories because they distract us from these key
correct.
lawsuits.
But
right?
how he talks
Okay.
riles people up,
Mm-hmm.
makes people. I stopped listening to it because I'm like, dude, you either know or you don't know. I don't care about maybe. And this is where you do have to be careful when you have an audience. When you're talking, well, I'm a journalist. You can't do
Right.
that when you're a journalist. And he has some good journalism. You're like, this is what we know,
Yeah.
right? This is what we know. And Ben Shapiro did a much better job. Now he's a little bit cautious, Ben
Yeah.
Shapiro.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm not going to say stuff until it's fairly clear.
Yeah.
I still think he's wrong about his stance on the vaccines, but
I agree. I
uh,
think I agree.
well,
I'm in the middle about
based
that.
on the no, I'm not. No, listen, I told my like, if you're old,
Yeah.
you should take them.
Yeah.
If you're compromised, you should take them. Here's the caveat: the new data says this is totally on a different tangent.
Totally.
The vaccines are effective from preventing infection or not preventing infection, from preventing severe issues for about I don't know, 8 weeks to like 4 to 6 months, 4 to 8 months. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a vaccine.
Right.
So, non-medical expert, if you're compromised, you might consider taking it until such a time as you get COVID, and then you stop. Alternatively, the governments, by the way, pre-vaccine, the FDA and all those people found about, I forgot, 8 or 12 different things that were already available that help. They're all off label now. That's the issue.
Right.
You send, like what that one state in India did, you send any vulnerable people, here's a COVID test kit. Here are preventatives you can take that should help. Take a test, you test positive, you take the stuff right away. And if then after you can't, you go to the hospital.
Mm.
That's how you protect health.
Yeah.
You have two methods to protect health.
Did you see what Denmark is saying now? I think it's Denmark.
Oh,
right?
they're going crazy now.
Well, they literally just said, just get everyone infected.
Yeah, I thought, yeah.
yeah, right?
Well, with Omicron. Bill Gates
With
publicly
Omicron.
said, unfortunately, Omicron is better than the vaccines. He said
that, eh?
He said that.
Wow.
He also said that the cloth masks don't work.
Yeah.
The mask thing to me, by the way, is so weird because do you know how
Yeah.
much literature was available on masks prior to the pandemic?
I don't know. How
There's
much?
over 70 peer-reviewed studies from around the world, plus
Okay.
another 30 that weren't peer-reviewed. During the pandemic, they did like 3 studies on either side. Everyone seems to agree were all poorly done. And the consensus is medical masks are barely useful,
Right.
unless for like spit protection.
Right. Interesting. See,
N95s, they do work
Yeah.
to a degree,
Yeah.
to a point.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
you're
who
not
wants
wearing an
to-
N95, and if you are going to wear it, you're probably not going to wear it properly.
Nope.
But here's the thing: here's where I go. Again, this is getting back to like fundamentals here.
Sorry,
at
we're
the
all
end
over
of
the
the
place.
day, we're so out all over the place. But the thing is regardless of what I think about the science or what the science is, let's imagine this vaccine is 100% effective, 100% safe for 100% of people.
Yeah, I'm just checking the time.
Does that permit you to make a law that says if you are or are not vaccinated, you can't you're allowed to make certain social contracts with people, and other people are not allowed to make those social contracts?
Well, so this is where it gets complicated. So, I just hate this. This is a vaccine discussion is so ignorant because it's like, to me and to a lot of people, a vaccine or series of vaccines, I take it and I generally don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Right. There are some that you have to take every 10 or so years, or a booster like tetanus. Well, hey, a tetanus shot, you do not want to get tetanus.
Right.
You get you think you have rabies, you do not want it. You get the vaccine for that.
Yeah.
Now, they don't give that out to people just because that's a brutal vaccine to take. Other vaccines that worked and stopped this thing from being a problem, I don't see any issues with them. These are things that have been tested for a long period of time. Now, even like, let's say the common one, the measles, right, for kids, it's like, hey, if you don't have the vaccine and there's an outbreak, your kid stays home.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's like, I mean, those vaccines I don't seem to think there's any serious issues with those vaccines at all.
Right.
So I don't have a problem giving it to my future child.
Yeah.
But that policy is like, well, hey, there's an outbreak, so for your child's safety, just keep them at home for a few days.
And even with those vaccines that are more effective, more tested, more robust, and safe, proven safe long term, we don't have rules saying if you're not vaccinated, you can't do this thing.
Yeah.
We
Well,
don't.
you can't go to school at the outbreak. That's
Right.
reasonable.
Because the whole point of vaccination is to get enough people vaccinated so that the people who aren't can still live life.
Yeah. Well,
That's
and,
the whole point.
I saw,
It's not a permission slip.
yeah, I saw someone saying, herd immunity is going to disappear. And I'm just like, I don't think they understand herd immunity like they think they do. Because you can get herd immunity from natural immunity.
Wait, back up. Herd immunity is going to disappear.
Yeah, that's what their statement was.
If we
I
don't get
I
vaccinated?
think they're inferring that less people are going to get vaccinated across the board for a variety of things now, even though most people are not saying that, who have a problem with the COVID-19 vaccines. They're not saying that. And I'm like, okay, that statement is just wrong on so many levels, because now you're saying that people are outright against vaccines. You know who's against vaccines? Outright? Fucking, what's her face? The Goop person.
The who?
Goop.
Gwyneth
Gwyneth
Paltrow.
You want to talk
Goop.
about
Oh
nuts?
my gosh.
She's nuts.
Oh, totally. Here's my vagina candle.
Yeah.
Smell it. Do you like that,
that's
Jonathan?
a crazy person.
Smell it.
Definitely not. But it's like, she's a diehard left-wing person.
Yeah.
Which hilariously, the studies all showed it's middle-aged women that were the most anti.
Really?
Who follow people like her.
Wow. Yeah.
It's just like this. First of all, herd immunity simply means that enough people have some kind of immunity against this stuff at any given time that if there is an outbreak, there will not be significant damage
Yeah.
to the whole.
Yeah.
So what they were modeling early on with COVID was like, well, for this virus, we need like 95% herd immunity, which was true for some previous things. And they were comparing apples and oranges. These are both fruits.
Yeah.
One of them is an RNA-based thing that is highly contagious, highly mutates. It's very difficult to control. And one of them is fairly stable. They're different.
Yeah.
And they're confusing people because, and I agree, this is where I agree. The average public member is scientifically illiterate on all political spectrums.
Mm-hmm.
So the people who are super pro-science can lie to your face and you won't know it.
Yeah.
And the people who don't trust science don't know the difference anyway.
And it's and like you said, it's true on both sides. What I've noticed, because I've been very active in these rallies.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, let's get to the rallies.
Yeah.
He's wearing the shirt.
Oh yeah. So I got all the merch. My bank account has not been frozen.
Yeah.
So thank goodness for that. I actually didn't contribute to Give, Send, Go or GoFundMe because I wanted to contribute directly to local efforts. Right.
Yeah.
So anyways, point being, so I've been at these rallies. Some context for me, like. I'm one of those people who's not seen anything happen that's worth like getting out on the street and like protesting. Actually, correction. There's plenty of things that I would like to protest, but not anything where I would have people around me joining me protesting, right? Like there's plenty of bills passed by this Trudeau government for over the last 7 years. I'd be willing to protest, but not everyone's on board with me. That's fine. But this is the first time where like everyone is like on board.
Yeah. It's a movement.
It's a huge movement. And so my whole life growing up, going to school, taking social studies, history, it's like you should feel guilty. You should feel guilty about being a white Canadian.
Yeah.
You're part of the problem. Your existence is racist, right? Oh, shoot. Now, I grew out of that and I didn't agree with it. But the point being is that I never felt proud to be a Canadian.
Yeah.
And being at these rallies, the first rally I went to, maybe it was a month ago, the first Vancouver Convoy rally. And for the first time, I felt that feeling that we sing about all the time in our anthem, patriotic love, right?
Yeah.
It was amazing.
And Jacob's all about the love.
I'm all about the love. The love is all we need.
I don't know. I'm not sold on this yet.
That's fine. Well, I'm working on you. It's all good. Love is more than a feeling. It's a whole lot more, but that's another conversation for another time. The point being is that this is the first time I felt proud to be a Canadian. So it was like looking at what it is we're standing up for, what it is that is being fought for, by all kinds of people, all skin colors. I know I was interviewed on Global. That first,
you're very proud of
that first valley. I'm not proud of it only because of what they used me for. They used me to run the agenda that this is still a mostly white movement. Right?
I could have told you that.
Oh,
I've been in the
kidding?
media before.
Yeah,
Even just to hold on for a sec.
Yeah.
Even in where they're happy for what's going on and they're pro what I'm going on. I have never been covered in any media where they got it right. There was always
Yeah.
an egregious error
Yeah.
in their article or
Yeah.
what they were saying that
Yeah.
was easy for them to check.
Yeah.
Hey, email me before you run it.
Yeah.
Hey, Google properly
Yeah. Yeah.
what you just in Israel when I went with the prime minister, they got my unit wrong,
Oh my gosh.
which is
It's
so easy
so
to check.
easy.
And
Yeah.
man, were my commanders pissed.
Yeah.
Anyways, go on.
Well, and the reason for that is because media, their whole occupation is based off just pumping out content,
Yeah.
fast, 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 quick, quick. You have no time. As my history in the professional world of film and television, there is so much effort going into filming and editing and then publishing even a 5-minute segment.
Yeah.
You don't have time in the day. Where's your time in 8 or 10 hours of your day to do investigation?
Yeah.
There's none. It's just, so how do you come up with a story? Well, that's just it. You just come up with a story and you find film and audio to fill it in. Like there's no other logistical way, realistic way to actually do investigative journalism. So I mean, at that aspect, I'm actually kind of sympathetic to the journalist who works for CBC or CTV. I know it's hard to believe I'm sympathetic towards them, but it's because they're in that job because they thought I'm going to do journalism, and now they're there and they're getting paid not doing journalism.
Yeah.
The real jobs, quote unquote, that have them doing journalism actually don't pay a whole lot, right? Unless you're Tim Pool or Joe Rogan or whatever, right? Where they're just asking questions, investigating, blah blah blah, right? So. But they're not going to be that. Their only avenue for getting paid for doing what is called by the public to be journalism is by doing these film and TV stuff.
Yeah.
But so, anyways, that's a big side note. What I want to talk about with these rallies is that so many different kinds of Canadians, all different, on any spectrum you could think of, right? Gender spectrum, orientation spectrum, race spectrum, religious spectrum, political spectrum. Even I've met previous NDP voters here at these rallies. Right?
Previous, not current.
Not current. No. I met two. I hitchhiked down to the border at one of the more recent rallies. I hitchhiked down to the border with two like 50-year-old Iranian women.
Yeah.
Who were little girls at the time of the Muslim Revolution.
Don't be surprised
in Iran.
Don't be surprised, by the way, if you get a knock on the door saying you admitted to hitchhiking, which is illegal.
Yeah, whatever. It's all an acting. This is a show. Get off my back, big brother. Anyways, so I always thought like whenever you see people like smoking weed, like in the States, right, like with Joe Rogan, right? It's like, how does he get away with that? Well, because they're acting. It's a show. That's how I figure they.
Well, he's in
they
Texas
get away
now.
with it,
He's not going to get charged with shit because the governor knows him personally.
Yeah.
So.
Well, anyways, with these people at these rallies, with all of the diversity, what I've noticed is like, hey, we have what we have here is we have like a legitimate like spectrum of demographics that represents like all of Canada, really. And what that means is you're gonna get a couple of really dumb people, a couple of really intelligent people, and mostly everyone is completely average, right? It's the bell curve, right? And so what's going to stand out then are the people on the ends of that spectrum, the extreme idiots or the extreme.
We focus on them too much.
And the media likes to focus on them, and you have some few amazing leaders. So what I've noticed is just that, a lot of people aren't, like you said, aren't very scientifically minded, and this is true of a lot of people that I meet at these rallies. I've heard discussions openly of them thinking we're getting poisoned from breathing through these masks. Like we're getting the toxins being injected into us because of these masks. It's like, no, you're not.
This is why, just so you know, I keep to myself most.
Yeah, I know. Because it's like what you're believing, what you're standing up for is correct. You being intelligent doesn't mean what you believe is correct. It just means that you're able to articulate and defend and stand for adequately, persuade even what is correct. Just because you might be part of the average or idiot side of the issue of the movement doesn't mean that makes the movement wrong. Right? It just means that the most people aren't able to adequately stand up for.
Like the Nazi flag thing.
Yeah.
I thought, because it said it had a swastika, Nazi flag. This is in the Ottawa protests. And then above it had the classic fuck Trudeau flag.
Yeah. Yeah.
So either this person was actually comparing Trudeau to a Nazi, which people still get mad about, or it's a plant.
Right.
because someone rightfully pointed out is like, who the hell is going to let someone walk through a crowd like that with a swastika and not probably punch them
Was this the swastika that was?
on Rideau Hall or whatever? Or not
Was it
Rideau
a?
Hall.
Was it the full-on Nazi flag?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was a full-on swastika flag with another reflector above it, and that's where they're like, "You see, there's swastikas. There's swastikas." It was at the hotel where the police are staying, and the photographer was convenient. The Trudeau's
Right. I
personal
saw that picture.
photographer
Yes.
was right there, ready to take the picture.
This was different from the swastika that was spray painted or something on the Canadian flag,
Oh,
right?
okay. Well, I didn't see that one, and I find usually stuff like that is usually an idiot teenager.
Well, the
Usually.
interesting story about that, because what that one was about was there was a conservative MP being interviewed, right? And behind him was this Canadian flag with a swastika on it, right? And he's like, "Oh, had I known, I wouldn't have done that interview." Blah blah blah, right? And so now people use that, of course, to say like, "Oh, this is a
Context.
more evidence." Well, but here's the nuance of this: is that person with the Canadian flag and the swastika on it, actually, I think it was Rebel that dug into this, of course.
You have to be careful with Rebel.
I
though.
do. I know. Rebel is great for like immediate on the. They're like the main. They're like the flip other side of the coin.
For
It's
people who
like,
don't know, Rebel News, as
Yeah.
relevant, is a modern right of center free press, if you will.
Yeah.
Most press in Canada, like seriously, almost 95% of press in Canada is getting
Yeah.
government handouts to survive.
Yeah.
And there's very few small, mostly right leaning thing. Now, Ezra Levant has done a good job at building up his network. He is very inflammatory, though. So you have
yes,
to be
you do have to double check.
careful what he's saying.
They're at the
sometimes.
bottom of my list
Yeah.
of reliable right wing sources. There are other right wing sources, but they're not as fast, and that's the key with Rebel is like it's good for fast information
Yeah.
because they're on the ground, they're right there. But anyways, what they discovered was that this person with that flag was actually they sprayed the swastika on it because they believe that Canada is a fascist nation.
Under Trudeau, it's becoming one.
Not because of Trudeau, but because of our white nationalist, colonialist.
So they were
origins.
anti-protest.
So they were anti-protest. They were saying Canada as a nation itself, to the core, is fascist, Nazi, racist, whatever. Right?
Fascism is a strategy for societal management. People don't seem to get that.
Yeah.
And Canada and the U.S. have under COVID have been acting fascist.
Yeah.
By using private businesses to do their dirty work, and when private businesses don't do their dirty work, they go after them.
Yeah.
That's how fascism works.
Yeah.
As part of it.
Yeah.
People forget that China is well at a social level. They still they're communist. China's government and its economic structure is a fascist structure now.
Yeah.
Because communism doesn't work. Fascism does. Communism doesn't.
Right.
They're both horrible and evil.
And until the good Lord comes, dictatorship won't work. Because what we because the best society, the best government, unarguably, I think, is a benevolent dictator. Singapore. What's it like in Singapore?
I don't know. I've never been. I can ask my wife. She lived there.
Oh, okay.
But my understanding, Singapore is probably one of the best examples of a benevolent dictatorship.
Really?
It's a very it's a great place to go, but you do not break the law there.
Right.
You do not.
Well, that doesn't sound very benevolent. What's the consequence of breaking? Oh, like
severe.
Yeah. So that doesn't sound very benevolent to me, right?
But apparently what they do in Singapore is if they will pay people who have college degrees if they get married. They're not like bribing them to get married. It's like, hey, you meet someone, you're both educated.
Wow.
They support those who put time into their education and bettering themselves and developing themselves.
Wow.
So if you're successful there, you will be able to survive a lot better through your merits, though.
Yeah. I wish that was a way that governments leaned more towards, was incentivizing people to do what they value rather than
what the government values, but it's like having a family of smart people is good for society.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Right. And it's there's this guy on Rogan he's I forgot his name, a black gentleman who's very like quote whitewashed. But he was just saying like when I was a child, my parents valued reading to me and teaching me math as a child.
Yeah.
And then when I went to kindergarten, I was way ahead of everyone else. And, and there's this progressive ideology, like, I'm sorry if you're not willing to talk about the home life of a lot of cultural groups in the States. That's the source of the problem. because any other group or any time someone from your group has a strong parental unit that is teaching their children reading, writing, math at home
Mm-hmm.
instead of whatever the hell else you're doing. Like, by the way, the poorest part of America is white Appalachia. Smoking crack in front of your children is not going to make your child
No.
smart. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not picking on anyone specifically. Free crack pipes, Biden. Brilliant idea.
I have lost touch of all of the political drama going on in the States because of what's happening. For the first time in a very, very long time, Canada has been more interesting to me.
I know, right? What an asshole do you have to be to make the entire world interested in Canadian politics? Like, just for, it's like, Jesus Christ. I can't believe it.
Yeah.
Anyways, but it shows you that the traditional conservative values of a good home life. Like, I got married not because I'm like, I need to get married, but because my wife listened to too much Jordan Peterson, and she said we need to
Okay.
get married because it's for the
Really?
kids, and it creates a stabler environment for that. Because the most important thing is, if you're going to have children, is you need to create a stable environment where there's consistency,
Mm-hmm.
so they're not confused, and you as a parent need to take control of their education at the especially 0 to 5. If you're handing them off to some generic daycare, like I was, like
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to throw my parents under the bus, but basically
Yeah.
I'm one of these
No
people
worries.
who, had I gotten support and development
Yeah.
at an early age, things would have been very different.
Yeah. Totally.
Funnily enough, actually hilariously, I was slow to talk. They put me in learning
Okay.
assistance.
Okay. Interesting.
And I said to my mother, these kids are morons. Like, I mean morons.
Huh.
Here's like a grade 2 kid being like, Mommy, these kids are dumb.
Right.
But I was put in there, and I often think maybe I should have stayed, because then I would have
Hmm.
actually gotten attention, and they would have realized, ooh. Because I need some guidance sometimes. The way my brain works is I'm
Mm.
obviously all over the place. So
Yeah,
I need
yeah.
some guidance. But it's like, that's what children need, is parents need to recognize what their child is good at and what their child is not good at, and they need to step up. If you just put you in a generic daycare when I was a kid, and they just sit you in front of the TV, they're not doing anything.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's how you don't get developed. And like in America, the Asian community is getting hammered by progressives because they value education in their children. And it's not this black gentleman, I wish I remember his name, who was just on Rogan, was talking about, okay, there was an article, a progressive article, that was saying these Asian families will choose to eat less to pay for their children's education. And then the next paragraph said how
Wow.
privileged they are. And he's like,
No.
what are you talking
That's-
about? They
yeah.
made the choice as a family to eat slightly less
Yeah.
and lower their quality of life standards so that they can afford their child's education and make sure their young child is educated. That, regardless
Wow.
of race, regardless of ethnic background, is how you get any group of people out of the hole, is young, proper childhood education, fundamentals, not this brainwashing crap
Yeah.
that's going on. Math, science, reading.
Yes.
Boom. That's it.
Yeah.
And when you have communities where they're like, yeah, just run around and punch each
This-
other, it's like, you're not going to get any.
But here's the perspective we need to have on the right, I think, on the conservative side, is that these things that the left values, I would agree, disproportionate and inappropriately out of sync with proper structure of values. But like these things like music, art, social sciences, philosophy, those are the higher and peak forms of our society.
I would argue philosophy needs to be taught at a lower level, but age appropriate, because philosophy is essentially discussion and how to argue.
Well, and logic too.
Yeah.
Like, people don't understand, like, just because you align with something or you're repeating what an expert says doesn't make what you're saying actually logically consistent.
Yeah, the problem with philosophy, there's too many people just making crap up and sounding philosophical, and it's like, you're not rooted in anything, guys.
Yeah. But my point is like, we need, even as conservatives, we need to realize, like, mathematics, sciences, English, right? All these core, and I would say even like physical activity, right?
Physical literacy,
absolutely,
is 100%
physical activity.
needs.
These form the foundation to that for something. Like their purpose is for something.
Yeah.
And what is that for something? Well, that for something is what the more liberal part of the spectrum really highlight, right?
But what would
however,
you define as liberal then?
Um, Good question. It depends on in what avenue, like liberal culturally, liberal politically. Liberal culturally is more around the arts, I
Mm.
think, where it's less. I'm not very well thought about in that on that side, but just to be generic and uneducated about my answer, the liberal arts, the social sciences, the music, um, visual art, etc.
Yeah.
Right? Like so,
The
but
more creative side of humanity.
yeah, but the STEM side, right?
Mm.
Technology, etc. You need that there. You need that to form the base. You need that to be more widespread, so that you can actually have a firm foundation for these other things to rest
Well,
upon.
you know,
Right?
I think that's a reasonable place because a reasonable point. Like if you look at a more primitive society,
Mm-hmm.
they have to do the food, the hunting, gathering. They
Yeah.
have to do that first,
Yes.
and then they storytell at night
Yes. Yes.
or write cave paintings. I don't know
Yeah.
why I couldn't say that. And that's the same thing. It's like the levels of the Maslow's hierarchy. It's like we
Yeah.
need the safety structure
Yeah.
and basic knowledge first, and then
Yeah.
we can play around with the arts and literature and stuff that is more we are able to do because we're more cognitively aware of the universe
Yeah.
as compared to other animals that are not. So they are still trying to figure tools out, right?
Yeah.
It's a fundamental, and when you take away the fundamentals and make it arts
Yeah.
or make it feelings, it's like
Yes.
that's not
and
reality.
and that's what's happening with the progressives is they're flipping it. They're
Yeah.
saying we don't need to prioritize maths and all of this because we've achieved what matters most, and so we can just keep pushing people in through
But then
those
you create
programs, right?
idiocracy, which is
Exactly.
a terrifying movie more now than the original movie.
Yeah. And I think, and we see this everywhere too. Like, so my whole thing with gender theory, right?
Mm.
It doesn't make sense to erase differences between men and women.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to eradicate this idea that men biologically are stronger than women,
Mm.
because once you eliminate it, you actually eliminate a more important reason for that. The reason men are stronger than women and why men go out and do the hunting and the fighting and the sacrifice in their life thing is because women are better.
Oh, you're one of those guys.
No, they are. No, they're superior. They are. I'm sorry. No, the whole and as a Christian, I kind of get this from my interpretation of the Genesis story, right?
Mm.
God creates everything, physics, light, no, non-life and life. It's all leading to this one thing. What's the last thing he makes is woman, right? The whole purpose of man, because man is created first, and then out of his womb, out of
He
his
was the
side.
beta.
Yeah, he's the beta. No, he's not. He's not a beta. But like everything he does is for sake of woman.
Yeah.
It's for sake. Like the whole point. If you take like what's the purpose of protecting?
Mm.
What's the purpose of provide? Who are you protecting? What are you providing for? Right? For this person who is woman. So I'd say even on a philosophical level,
This is
Yeah.
coming from a theological
It is.
perspective of a religion that respects women, because not all do.
No, not all do. But I'd say you can even see this in biology,
Mm.
because if we have this special Y chromosome that gives us all of these cool abilities, right? Not that I don't know much about the second X chromosome as far as women goes, but I'm not well
Well,
studied.
it's XY or XX, and then occasionally you
You
will
have
get
all
XXY,
kinds of different,
which
yeah,
is
exactly.
rare. It's rare.
But even then, the Y is still triggered, and the second X is like null almost.
Yeah.
So I don't really. My wife is way more educated about this stuff than I am. But anyways, the point being, I'm trying to make here is even if you look at it from a biological, behavioral perspective, like just apply a philosophical why question, right? The Socratic method. Well, why, right? Why? Just ask that question. Well, the simplest answer is because these things are in place evolutionary. You can forget about God if you want. Why do these things exist biologically is for sake of the feminine.
Yeah, see, I don't know if I agree with that as a it's a good argument. The it's like conservation of energy is a physics principle. Is
Mhm.
that there's a point of diminishing returns in anything, and if you look at anything as a use of energy and resources, no one thing can ultimately do everything, and
Right?
what the two species is, or that's not species. Two men are from Mars, women are
Ah,
from Venus, right?
yeah,
The two sexes are is a split use of energy with a different approach to things. And why that's
right,
important is it's a dichotomy. Not one is better than the other. It's a dichotomy, more like
right.
yin and yang, because and this is where the expanse I talk about this gets interesting because it got me the question of evolution is there an end goal of evolution
Mm,
or is it an open-ended code of yes, no, solve the problem?
mm,
Because if there's no end goal, it means one thing. And if there is actually a definitive end goal, let's say a God says, hey, here's your end goal. In your
right.
case, here's your end goal. I don't care how you get there.
Yeah,
Well, if everything is the same, you'll never get there.
right.
Because eventually hit a brick wall and like, we don't know how to solve this problem.
Mm,
So by having a dichotomy and different split of roles, historically was child rearing and manual labor
mm-hmm.
to take care and resource.
Mm-hmm.
That was biologically how it turned out to be for our species. Other species are different, but that's what worked. And now you have a split labor. Now we can really focus on raising children and getting them sound and ready. And we can also really focus on resource gathering. And it's more efficient to do it split. And then biologically, men have different inclinations to things like engineering and this. And I know James Damore gotten a lot of shit for saying this in his
It's
Google
just,
thing,
yeah.
but it's this just it's more efficient that way. And this
Mm-hmm.
idea, oh, we only need one thing. It's like no, because and that's why it is a spectrum because evolution, the process of evolution is really a yes no. Hey, if I do this, what happens? Versus if I do this. And sometimes it succeeds and sometimes it doesn't as far as a strategy. So, the XXY chromosome is, for lack of a better word, a mutation. And it doesn't really have an end goal. It's kind of like a dead thing. It's like,
Mm,
and now there's an argument about homosexuality about it's actually, again, not an expert, a breakdown of protein that causes after, if you have a whole bunch of sons, the later ones are more likely to be homosexual.
yeah, that is true. I've
So
noticed
they don't
that.
like to talk about this because when you start talking, really getting down to the why, sometimes people start panicking and say, well, if we really understand the why, then we can prevent homosexuality. And that's what all these progressives go to. It's like,
Mm,
we can't talk about this because now we know why it works. So what if people are trying to get rid of these people? And it's like,
yeah,
this is what I call the Hitler effect. Everyone's terrified of being Hitler, that they
yeah,
don't want to explore the truth.
yeah. That's true.
And what if that is just in that particular genetic line of saying, "Hey, stop reproducing"? Now, where science comes
That's an
in,
interesting idea.
where science
Ah.
comes in, it's like, well, we can actually counter that now.
Mm-hmm.
And what if countering that is a bad idea? I'm not saying it is, but what if it's there for a reason?
Right?
Because we as humans start saying we understand the universe, which we don't yet. We're not
No,
even
no.
close. We know the right answer. And you do something so stupid as to streamline everything into one, and then boom, something comes along and wipes it out. That's why Elon Musk is like, we need to get on Mars. We need to get on Mars. We need to get on Mars. Because despite what we think is a technologically advanced, it is still actually probable that an asteroid we still didn't see comes because we're blinded by the sun, comes from that direction
Yeah.
and smokes us, and we're screwed as a species.
Yeah.
And people don't
Totally
think broad.
true.
They don't think broad enough. So all these
Yeah.
people, like, have you ever seen Space Force? It's been on Netflix a million.
No,
It's
I
so
know.
funny.
Really? I've heard mixed
The
reviews
first season,
because I love Michael Scott. Even though it's not Michael Scott,
oh
I
yeah,
know. Yeah, but Steve Carell. Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
love him,
Arrested
but
Development.
I
Yeah.
never saw that.
Oh wait, no. Michael Scott is The Office. The Office? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Office.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
mixing it up. I was thinking Jason Bateman because anyway.
Also a good show
Yeah.
though. Yeah.
Sorry, where was
Space
I? Oh,
Force.
Space Force. There's the making fun of AOC very clearly.
Really?
And
Oh,
there's
that's
like
awesome.
Senate committee of why they need money, and just tell my constituents why they need to pay $100,000 for an orange to fly into space. And they're clearly attacking AOC.
Okay.
Um, and the Space Force General Steve Carell is trying to explain it, and then the science guy John Malkovich
Okay.
is like, well, because it's trickle down of technology, right? Actually, what happens is then because of the developments NASA made, and because of the development, your constituent now has this thing, Tang, of all things. No, it's like, who wants Tang? But it's just like people don't see the breakthroughs take a tremendous amount of resources. They just
Mm.
do
Mm.
because we don't know how to be efficient with it. We don't know how to do it. And then once those breakthroughs happen, you can start to make it a lot easier for stuff. But if everyone only ever thinks the same way, you'll never make those breakthroughs. It's the
Yeah.
outliers that make the breaklight.
Totally.
It's not the people who do as they're told.
Going out into chaos, the
Yeah.
unknown.
Which is
right?
why it's so problematic for academic to have ideologically all the same ideas.
Yes.
It's dangerous.
Yes. That's what they're trying to do,
Yeah.
though.
You get stagnation and you get
It's
failure.
horrendous, man.
You have to let the crazy people be crazy
Yeah, you
sometimes
do.
and let them figure stuff out. Now, I think evolution actually figured this out as a mechanism in the coding, right? Again, if you want to say God programmed it, by all means. But
Yeah.
it's basically saying, okay, 80% of you in that middle of the bell curve, you do comfort. Because if you
Right.
all jump off the cliff, you're all dead. Let Bob
Right.
jump off the cliff.
Right.
Now, unfortunately, you got the bottom 10. I'm sorry, they're just go play with the rock over there, okay? You do that.
Yeah.
But this 10% is like, if you ostracize this 10%, which historically the status quo always does, you don't get progress. But it's this 10% on on what any given topic, the top 10% on this bell curve is like, we need to experiment. We need to do this. And a lot of them will fail. But that one guy will be like,
Yeah.
Again, Bob is still hitting himself with the rock. But not picking on anyone named Bob. It's just a classic thing. This guy is Da Vinci.
Yeah.
And everyone else is here is like, I don't understand what you're doing. This is mind-boggling. You're a witch.
Right.
But really, and you see that with progressives in universities, they're basically calling anyone who's questioning what they're doing a witch.
Yeah.
And saying, no, you're wrong. And it turns out, according to the data,
Yeah.
oops,
Yeah.
progressive ideology is based in ideas and nothing tangible in most cases. The idea often starts with a good point. We want everyone to be equal. That's
Yeah.
a good idea.
Yeah.
It's not how the universe works. I'm sorry.
Right.
Equality of, Equality of opportunity,
Yes.
not equality of outcome.
Yeah.
Because Bob's still hitting himself in the rock. He is not going to build rockets.
I'm gonna laugh every time you say that.
People need to accept this. I'm sorry, that
Yeah.
guy's a moron.
Yeah.
Do I treat him badly? Try not to.
Yeah.
Right? Try not to. He's a human being.
Yeah.
But Bob's not building rockets.
Right.
And what progressive ideology is doing is saying Bob can build rockets. No, he can't. But if I believe he can't, no.
Right.
I'm sorry, no.
Right.
He's hitting himself in the head with a rock. He's not building rockets.
Right.
And this is why meritocracy is so important. You don't want meritocracy actually protects against corruption of the rich if you actually believe in meritocracy.
Right.
I don't give a shit if your kid is rich as fuck. He cannot build a rocket either. He doesn't get special treatment. Too bad.
Yeah.
Right? But everyone wants access to the money. That's why they treat them special. And a lot of these rich kids end up doing well because they get the right mentors, they get the right people. And that's where people get upset about it.
Right.
Fix the education system. Who's ruined the education system in the last 2 years? The teachers and their unions. Sorry, teachers, most of you suck, first
Yeah.
of all. But your unions and the politicization of this and your personal anxieties have ruined the children's lives. And that's what the data is showing because of your bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? So the progressive
Totally.
ideology is destructive on so many levels. It's ruining. And you know what? If you want to get conspiratorial, it was intentionally doing that at the highest level. Because if you get into the down the weeds about communism infiltrating the education system,
Yeah.
or even Klaus Schwab infiltrating these groups, and because there's rumors about George Soros funding really progressive candidates.
I still don't know a whole
Yeah.
lot about Soros.
Soros is just
Like,
a
what's
financier.
Soros's deal?
He's just a financier.
Okay.
He finances Klaus Schwab.
Okay. He's just a guy with money with a
And up until
similar
recently,
agenda.
Klaus Schwab was in the shadows,
Yeah.
and Soros was taking all the heat. And now Klaus Schwab, it's his ideas, is
Right.
come to the surface.
Because he started WEF he's an old guy, right?
Who? Soros?
Schwab. No,
Oh,
Schwab.
Oh, younger than Soros.
Because I thought it was like founded in the 70s.
Yeah.
Wow.
He
Yeah,
wrote
it's
his book.
old.
Yeah.
And you're saying it needed another couple or
He
so
came in during the
decades.
economic collapse. He used the devastation of bad policy,
You got to destroy before you rebuild.
and that is actually a strategy that
Yeah.
can work.
Well, I'm an hour into that podcast, that Joe Rogan podcast with I forget his name, but he's like an ex Muslim.
Oh, Majid Nawaz.
Yeah.
Everyone has to listen to that one.
Well, that's the thing
Has
is you
to
sent me
listen
that
to
and
that.
I've just started listening to it.
Because he blows the lid off this whole thing.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing now with Russia is these dumbass ideas about how to deal with other cultures when you don't even understand the other culture. All these progressive politicians advising Biden. Biden's not making decisions.
No. He's left the planet. I feel so bad for Biden. He is just a shell.
Yeah,
he's an old man who.
It's sad.
It's very sad. No, I'm not angry at Biden at all or upset with him.
Man, there was one time he was just randomly going off on some story about he was getting in a fight with the guy when he was younger, and he pulled a chain out because he pulled a knife out, and I'm like everyone's just sitting there quietly listening, and it's like his memory is shot.
Yeah.
He's talking about an experience from his youth about pulling a chain out to get in a fist fight with a guy with a knife. And it's just like, huh? I mean, at that point to me was the story that I'm like, he has lost it.
Did you see that speech? I love Tucker Carlson. Tucker was responding to one of Biden's speeches.
I just don't like his snark.
Tucker's snark?
It's unnecessary.
Sure, but it's fun.
Yeah, but that's the issue.
Yeah, I know. Whatever. Like no. See, it's not good for the mass population, but for smart guys like us, it can just be entertainment. Right?
Well, you know, don't really remember what you're going to say. Is that when he was a third-tier Fox person, I still lived at my parents with cable because I don't have cable anymore because I'm not paying for that.
No, me neither.
He was good. As soon as he took over the first thing, he developed that TV personality, and I'm like, I can't watch this anymore.
Yeah. Well, Biden was saying something about, like, he was giving this speech, this really, like, ferocious, like, passionate speech about our God-given, and then, right? Like, literally stuttered like that, and Tucker's response was like that scene in Bruce Almighty where the anchor is That's what that was. So good.
I just don't understand. And then they had Kamala, who is literally one of the most hated politicians in America before she even became VP.
Our first black president.
I don't even know if they want that to happen, though. The proverbial.
Already happened, man. Biden went in for some surgery and
gave
those temporarily.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Our first black president, our first black female president, our first female president.
Yeah. Canada had a similar. We had a female prime minister briefly.
Yeah, we did.
Someone got
like a couple months.
Yeah, someone got kicked out of power.
Yeah,
that's why it seems to be the trend that that the interim leaders can be female, but not the actual leaders.
Candice Bergen, who is our interim leader here in Canada right now, until we have our conservative leadership race.
She's okay. I just think she's not she's too soft. I thought what's her face was better.
Leslyn Lewis?
No. She would have been good.
I know who you're talking about.
Ambrose.
Ambrose.
When she was intern. I thought she was better.
She was hardcore, yeah.
Because she's more, you have to be concise in your words when you're in that position. I would never be that good because I'm all over the place. Right. But I think whoever you are, you got to be very concise in how you're talking.
I like Bergen.
Yeah. I mean,
she's a good leader, like as far as what I'm observing. And again, I'm not a conservative voter.
Yeah.
Like I've voted PPC twice.
Yeah.
You're still have to get on board, but
because it's just a mechanism. It's like, it depends. Like so the last time I voted conservative because this used to be a strong conservative riding. Mm-hmm. And it flipped to liberal for some stupid. So I was hoping to flip it back. But if I'm in like a riding I know is not going to flip, I would have voted PPC.
Right.
For a protest vote, but it's more I'm voting strategically.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm in between, man. If I'm with you that if Pierre's in, I'm more prone to vote conservative.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that I'm not. That's a final answer.
Yeah.
But absolutely no questions if Pierre isn't the leader.
But that's the thing is, I
will be voting
think
PPC.
any voter should be willing to switch their vote depending on what's going on. And these diehard party hardcore people.
Yeah,
I think
if you accurately represent my values according to a standard of my personal convictions, so that what that means is there's never a perfect party. PPC doesn't represent everything I believe in perfectly, so I can modulate appropriately. What I'm not in favor of is just voting for someone so that another guy doesn't win. If that's the only like standard, then I'm not in favor of that.
The line of don't split the vote. I'm like, shut up. That's democracy. Stop saying that.
That is exactly, that's democracy, and vote splitting has been happening forever, and it's why we have 4 left-wing parties in parliament right now?
I mean, you could argue in the States it's why we got where we are because of vote splitting. In the U.S., Clinton got elected, and then you can argue that something happened in the Clinton, his first term. I've heard this from a bunch of different people that he's like, he was actually fixing stuff. And then something happened. And then he went with this globalist agenda. And then since then, they've entrenched it in the U.S. Democratic Party. Hillary Clinton still won't go away. which shows you how entrenched
Yeah.
she is in the machine. And it's like that's when you started to see the shift of politics. And like in American politics, it's interesting. People have short-term memory.
Yeah.
Is a lot of Jews are like
Goldfish.
the Republicans are this, the Republicans are like that. I'm like, hey, but there are raging anti-Semites in the Democratic Party, and they're not kicked out. Last time someone was a raging anti-Semite in the Republican Party, they kicked them out. So why are you Jews just blindly voting Democrat? Well, because the Republicans are racist. But
Yeah.
are they?
Yeah.
Show me. Where
Yeah.
are they?
Yeah.
It's like whenever they talk about in the States about the voter ID laws being racist, I just hear them screaming out voter ID as being racist. I'm like, where has this happened? Now, I know it has happened in very specific cases as a general rule, but is it widespread? You're telling me black people can't get an ID? And if your state doesn't have state issued ID that is not a driver's license, fix that. Like
Yeah.
BC, you can get a non-driver's license ID. It's not an issue.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can get it. What's the problem?
New York now, though, you don't need ID.
Which is insane.
Yeah.
It's insane. What democratic country other than America is having this debate?
Yeah. I hold when we've had two in British Columbia, we've had two votes during this pandemic. We had our provincial vote and our national vote.
Yeah.
And on both times, I refused to wear a mask
Yeah.
because, like, part of it, just down to this.
And they have to let you in to vote.
They do. But also, like, you're supposed to be checking visually my ID.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
That's part of it. It's like, it's not a big deal.
Well, I don't think it's
but,
like that here. But, I was like,
But it's why visual ID exists.
But the real problem,
right?
what happened in the Canadian election last time, that I was shocked. I was actually shocked. 200-something thousand.
205,000.
5,000. This is not conspiracy
No.
theory.
They talked about it in
Canada
Parliament.
elections admitted it. 205,000 mail-in votes
We're
were
not
not
counted.
counted. That is factually worse
Then what
than
happened
the
in the States.
accusations in the States.
Yeah.
And they're like, oops, we won't do it again next time. Go back and count the
No.
votes. Go back and count the votes. Go back and count the votes. Especially
Yeah.
now. Go back and count those votes. Do you still have them? You do because you're supposed to.
Yeah.
Go back and count those votes. Because 250,000 votes, depending on the riding breakdown, can swing the election
Yeah.
or at least knock some seats off.
Yeah.
And may explain why my former riding in Richmond, which was a dedicated conservative with a conservative MP who the community liked and was engaged in the community and in the polling was ahead 15,000
Yeah.
or it was ahead by 15 points, or something,
Sure.
lost.
Yeah.
That might explain it.
Yeah.
It's like he said Chinese interference, and he's a Chinese. He's a Chinese guy. He's a Chinese conservative, but he's like I'm like, wait, what?
Yeah.
How did that seat flip?
Where is this on cable news? Nowhere.
Well, nobody watches cable news
It's
in
true.
Canada anymore.
But I bet, I bring this up with people a lot, and they're like, where'd you hear this from? Where's your source?
the
Right?
government?
The Elections Canada.
Yeah, who's
Right?
supposed to be independent.
Right, exactly. No, man, I hear you. It's so, and the argument is like, well, I mean, what are they going to do now? They're just going to
Count the votes.
count the votes, but what are they going to do after they count the votes?
Switch the MPs if they switch. That's how
Well,
that-
exactly. Well, people say like, no, they can't do that. It's like, yeah, you can.
Yeah. Or
Just do it.
For every liberal MP that wrote their constituents saying, I'm not allowed to vote in no confidence. I'm your constituents. Do it.
Right.
They were telling people incorrect information about the legal process. You, as any party member, can
Yeah.
vote however you want.
Yeah.
They just don't. There's a difference.
Yeah.
But they're confusing people, and people are saying it's illegal to vote no confidence. No, it's not.
Right.
There are so many ways you can do a vote of no confidence in Canada.
Yeah.
It's the only way you can easily remove a party leader.
Yeah.
And they just, all parties refuse
There's-
to do this now.
There's a cool petition actually that was introduced to the House of Commons that I signed on. I could send you a link too because you'd be interested. But basically,
If it's House of Commons one, I'll sign it. I won't sign the
Yeah.
stupidchange.org.
no. This is a House of Commons. It's on there. It's on the House of Commons website.
I mean, Trudeau's just going to ignore it anyway. But.
Sure, but the petition basically it's a conservative petition. It
Yeah.
says that currently there exists no law for the public to via petition. So
Yeah.
it's a petition for creating petitions, but these petitions would be designed to take down, to create and revoke legislation.
Yeah.
So both, as well as to have a member of parliament resign.
Yeah. There was one in Alberta. There needs to be a
Prime Minister
mechanism.
resign.
There's no
Yeah.
recall mechanism for an MP.
Yeah.
unless they resign due to criminal activity or are criminally charged. There's no
Right.
recall method, and people want
This
recall
petition
method.
wants to make create such a mechanism.
It's actually a good idea because in a lot of European countries they have referendums,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
politicians hate that because it's
Exactly.
such a pain in the ass to do,
Right.
and it might not go the way they want.
But we're going so digitally now anyways. It's like
Yeah,
I talked a lot, like this is something that I agree with a lot of left leaning people. It's like, yeah, like we have the technology, like let's make it
it's got
secure.
to be blockchain
It's
based.
exactly. It's got to
Have
be
to.
super
Yeah,
secure, blockchain based. Exactly.
yeah,
But that is the technology I'm talking about,
yeah.
right? Where we can just go in and vote as a
And
people
I do
on
think
certain
I think
things.
it actually might be better to do it after the fact, unless it's like certain major things, like oh, we're going to change the constitution. No,
No.
you need a referendum first of all. You can have a hard no, but that's an example.
Yeah.
Like in the states, they can actually change the constitution, but to do it is
There's a high bar.
a long
High
process.
bar.
All the states have to be on
Yes.
board. It's a big crazy thing.
Yeah.
So you could say then, yes, if the government does something because of corruption, most likely, or if political interference or party partisan politics does a thing, and the public is like,
Hmm.
then there should be the public can say, listen, you're undoing that. I'm not waiting 10 years for a majority government to get in to undo this nonsense.
How long do you think it's going to take for us to heal from what Trudeau's done
I think it's not.
over, not just now, but like,
I think it's not a Canadian thing. It's a global thing right now.
yeah,
This is a serious problem of these geopolitical groups interfering in local politics, interfering in what the people actually want. Then you have China and Russia who independently are doing their own things and also saying screw you to these globalists. That's essentially what this is right now. With the Russia thing, it's people forget like Ukraine's been a proxy war for quite some time now. It's the
yeah,
14 Orange Revolution or 13 Orange Revolution was an Obama sponsored coup or not coup or election to get out a Russian puppet president to install a Western supported puppet president. Whether they're
mm-hmm.
puppet or they're just supportive. So stop with this it's just Russia crap. Like you're both playing this game to do with Russia doesn't want to be told what to do and leave us out of this and stop bullying us and stop screwing this. And they have a very different mentality over there. Now the Ukrainians are screwed now and no one's going to help them. I'm sorry, it's over. It's going to be over.
So
Um,
sad.
the real issue, Taiwan, different story.
Mm.
The moment they didn't send troops to Ukraine, oh, we don't have troops there, too late. If you start sending troops, let's say, because by the way, Putin threatened nuke, which I don't believe for a second. But
Wow.
if you send troops there now, it's a war. It's a full on war,
Yeah.
like full on war. So if they want to avoid full on war, there's nothing they can do now. It's too late. They should have sent their troops there like a year or two ago, and put them there. But they
Right.
didn't want to play that game. It's too late. Like when Russia struck, they basically blew out their airports, blew out their anti-air, blew out everything within 4 hours. I don't know if you saw that.
No, I
And the
saw explosions. I've seen
Ukrainian
clips of
troops.
stuff.
I don't know the details as I'm recording this, and if you're listening, we'll know by the
Yeah,
time.
exactly.
But he basically crippled them within a very short amount of time. And prior to this, all the intel was saying if Russia wants to, they can take Kiev in 48 hours.
Yeah.
So
It's one of those things, man, where it's like, there's just nothing we can do about it.
No.
So it's like my brain kind of just shuts off and just like hopes for the best.
it was like Syria. The moment Russia get in there, they let Russia take a foothold. It's like leave because otherwise it's going to be another proxy war that's a disaster. You either want to help or you don't want to help, and that's it. You go in and help properly, or you don't get involved.
Mm.
I used to be very like, oh, the war. It's like, no. First of all, what do the people want?
Mm.
Like, what does Ukrainian people want? Now, is that region in eastern Ukraine actually want to separate? Then let them.
Right. Exactly.
It's like Barcelona and Spain has been begging to leave Spain, and the rest of Spain is like, no. Why? Because it's the major economic hub.
Which is why Canada, as you said to me over text message,
Yeah.
I'm exposing you. No, yeah, Canada shouldn't be sending troops in any capacity.
At this point, no, just for the sake of our troops.
Yeah.
At this point, it's too late.
Should we be helping in other ways?
It's complicated. That's like,
And I guess I'm asking more on a moral question than a practical question.
if Ukraine
right?
asks, sure.
Okay.
If they're like
if Ukraine
if
asks.
Ukraine is like we want to
Yeah,
help,
that's fair.
then yes.
That's totally fair. Yeah,
But sending our troops
I agree.
there for anything other than a full-on war,
Yeah,
why?
right.
At this point. At this point.
Yeah,
It's like Syria when they're talking about it, and as soon as Russia landed, I'm like, Syria's got it. It's Russian now. You guys lost your silly proxy war. Get out. There's no point. Taiwan is different. Taiwan is a very different animal. Japan, Australia, and several other nations, Philippines, will be there so fast with their navies.
yeah.
So fast. Because we have no tactical way to get everything into Ukraine fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
But those aircraft carriers the Americans have that hang around just outside the South China Sea.
Yeah. I heard China's actually threatening or desiring to take like Australia's chunk of Antarctica.
Yeah, I saw that.
Right?
And here's the other thing is England, I just saw recently, England has been giving the Philippine Navy. By the way, the Philippine Navy is better than the Canadian Navy.
Oh,
We don't really
really?
have a Navy. They were giving them the top tier, like stealth gunboats.
Huh.
I saw some photos of it. So
Interesting.
they've actually been preparing for this one for a lot more serious way.
Call me a racist, but I didn't think
And
the
here's
Philippines would have.
and here's the other thing. The Filipino army has a lot of experience.
Hmm.
A lot of experience.
Hmm.
They've been fighting off terrorist groups for years now.
Wow.
In the various islands and separatists and this and that. What people
like pirates?
and Muslim extremists and
Okay.
other things
Wow,
and
that's
whatever.
interesting.
What people forget is that if this becomes with China, it becomes a traditional war, China loses. They have 1 million people. 1 million people who don't know how to fight a war. That's Russia, a very small
Right.
army, experienced army,
Right.
very experienced.
Right.
They're
They're fighting all the time.
They're fighting all the time.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that China's strategy is don't let them get boots on the ground, which is why they spent all their time on anti-air, on tech to disrupt hacking.
TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok is
Long-term
don't use TikTok.
destabilization.
I don't care if it makes you money. Get the fuck off TikTok. Like I don't have TikTok.
It's so addicting.
They just
though.
released another article that even if you have an Apple phone, TikTok can get around their security and get all your information.
Wow.
Get off TikTok.
That's awesome. Come on.
Or get a burner phone with fake information, and
Yeah.
then by all means, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah. I
But
know.
not on your.
I'm
main
not gonna
phone.
pretend to be the moral high ground here. I love TikTok.
Yeah.
I'm on it all, like almost every day.
You know what even
It's-
screwier about TikTok? Do you know what kids see in China on TikTok?
Oh, engineering stuff.
Engineering,
Yeah,
science. You know what
that's
kids
how
see
they
here?
encourage-
Stupid ass dances.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Which I mean, I just don't understand. Is we seriously all looking at the same stupid ass dance and calling this something good?
I don't watch the dances. I watch the funny gamer
Oh, yeah.
clips or whatever, the Call of Duty stuff, the Friday at Freddy's thing or whatever.
Yeah, we'll just do Twitch.
Anyway,
then.
but yeah, I know. No, I agree. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you're objectively right. But I'm not morally. You okay there?
No, I'm just checking because at 3 hours, I just need to know 3 hours because it's where like
Sure.
YouTube cuts out.
Oh, I
We've
see.
still got like an hour and 10
Cool,
minutes.
cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's one of those things where it's like I'm willing to admit I don't have the moral high ground there.
Yeah.
Like I know that's wrong, and I'm part of the problem.
User.
But it's like if just be honest with those things, right? It's like
Yeah.
I mean that you told me that's something you admired about me when I had to stop Krav Maga.
Yeah.
It was just like no, like this is no longer part of my priorities.
Oh, yeah. I wish
Um,
more people. I don't care your stupid story. Just say, listen, it's not my priority. I like it, not my
Yeah.
priority. When you start telling me all this and that, I'm like,
Why?
I don't care.
No.
Are you did you have an accident that I should probably know about? I don't
Yeah.
care why you're not here. I just see
Right.
that you're not here. If you're like, I appreciate what you did, not my priority.
You
I'm
want
like,
to
cool.
notice
Yeah.
because your policy is like I forget what it was, but
Cancellation
part of your policy was let me know in advance and it won't count against. It won't be like I think you have a strike system or something like that.
No, if you want to cancel, it's half of whatever's left. Just
Right.
let me know. And if you're screwing around with me, it's like
Yeah.
I'll flat. I started doing that. I don't like it, but if you're screwing with me about why you can't pay, etc., I flag you, and I don't want you back as a student.
Right. Yeah.
So, which doesn't happen often. And
Yeah.
here, people in other places, I'm sure, do it all the time. But it's
Yeah.
like, I'll put a note saying, don't, this is not someone you want in the school
Yeah.
because they're not serious.
And for me, it was like I was just getting so tired
Yeah.
during the week with my other stuff, and I wanted Sundays was the only day I could come,
Yeah.
and it became I want that time with my wife.
Yeah.
It was that and a mix of just like legitimately having to miss weekends because sometimes we go over to the island to visit, her family. I think we went on vacation, to New York that year or something like that. It was just all these kinds of things I was
Yeah.
missing, and it was like it's like,
Well,
I don't want to keep spending money because I was still paying you, I think,
Yeah.
and so I just didn't want to be spending
take
money.
your money.
I know you will, but I don't want to give it to you unless I'm getting something back.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so it's fair because we're on contract, and I honor that. And so at that point, though, it was just like, yeah, no, at this point, I have other priorities. I wish I could. And that's where we get into this, we have to realize, like, I think we throw around words like love and want,
Yeah.
like, way too much. It's like,
Like totally.
and oh man, you made me lose my train of thought. But at the same time, it's unfair. I think it's unfair to say that just because you're not doing something doesn't mean you don't want it. Like if you this idea that if you really wanted it, you would go out and get it or try.
Yeah. Well,
right?
it's
we human beings we compartmentalize,
Yeah.
right? We have I wish I could do it, but it's not at the top of my priority, and I've just not, as an imperfect human being, I'm not managing it the way I would envision myself to manage all of my wants.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I just have to prioritize the top tier wants, right?
I got well, I can say two things. I got an email during COVID when we were allowed to be open, and this I forgot I was talking about something about gun rights and why guns may be important for self-defense,
Yeah.
and depending where you are. And
Yeah.
this guy sent me an angry email like, "I don't want to hear about your extreme right-wing bullshit. Like, don't ever email me again." And it's like, at first you're like taken aback, and then it's like, okay, I appreciate that feedback. I mean, I think you're the lunatic, but I would wish it if more people who didn't like it would just say, "Listen, I don't like anything you're saying, and I don't want to come back."
Right.
Well, okay, because maybe I'm just being too abrasive up front, and because a lot of people who don't agree with me still train at my school because they like the environment, they realize they're getting something out of it. So I appreciate that feedback, even if I want to punch that person metaphorically in the face, of course, because I just think you're delusional when you send an email like that. Most people just don't say anything. I get the hint when they don't respond back. I'm like, obviously they don't like me. Okay.
Yeah.
But I want real feedback. Real feedback is how you get better, which is why this whole politeness and love thy neighbor stuff gets a little wishy-washy.
Well, what is love,
Yeah,
right? So it's not just like wishy-washy, right?
When done properly, right?
Well, the thing is like, what is love? Love is, it's like a bird's eye view of what is objectively true, good, and beautiful. We call those the three transcendentals.
Is this Catholicism?
No, this is actually philosophical.
Oh,
That's I think that's Aristotelian philosophy, are the transcendentals. Although Thomas Aquinas, who is a saint, but also like you study him when you study philosophy as well. He is in the 14th century, maybe, I can't remember, like at the turn of the millennium, essentially between 1000 and 1500 is where he exists, the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyways, but Thomas Aquinas talked a lot about the three transcendentals, which are truth, goodness, and beauty. And so what love is it's everything that's true, good, and beautiful, like simultaneously, right? Like it doesn't. So in other words,
so impossible.
not impossible, but the point is, like, if something is true, it's also going to point you to the good, and it's also going to point you to the beautiful, and the beautiful is also going to point you back to the true and the good, right? So when we have these conversations with people over about what's right or what's wrong, it ultimately does lead into the issue of, what are we talking about morality here? Well, yeah, we actually are. Like when we talk, I've had people approach me saying, like, Jacob, like, these things you're saying might be true, but they're not good.
Yeah.
No, you're wrong. Because me saying the truth, even if it might hurt your feelings, and you might perceive that as being, not good or not loving, actually the fact that it's truthful and the fact that I'm saying it in order to have dialogue or open your eyes or whatever it is, right? even if I'm speaking a truth that is about something that's bad, like let's say, um, burning down buildings for sake of a particular cause,
Political cause.
right? That's wrong,
Let's
and
bail those people out who
and
went to reoffend.
and you shouldn't do that. Someone might say, "Well, Jacob, don't say that because you're harming the cause that it's supposed to point towards."
What
Right? It was like,
cause?
right, and so, well, no. Actually, if you acknowledge what I'm saying is true, that what that requires of you now is to reevaluate and pivot and follow the nuance of your position, whatever that might be. It's not just like, oh, my feelings don't feel good, therefore the truth isn't worthy of being spoken. No, the truth is always worthy of being spoken, because the truth is going to point you to what's good. The truth might not feel like it's good, but the truth is by nature good. And so you should want. It's like, one of the things my biggest pet peeves is when people say, "Oh, Jacob, you just want to be right."
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I do want to be right.
No,
it's a
that's
good
actually,
thing to be right.
That's often their ego that they are lacking information and are failing to make a reasonable argument, and they can't admit it.
And what it is what they're saying is you're not recognizing that I'm right. So it's the difference between desiring to be right or desiring for someone else to notice that you're right, which is exactly what
what
you
is
said
it?
with ego.
Crowder, he's a bit obnoxious, but changed my mind.
Yeah.
I got that.
I love that meme.
A long time. Like, you're just difficult. Nobody can change your mind. You can't argue with you. I'm like, I'm sorry, but your argument sucks. You're not making a good point. You're just talking bullshit.
Yeah.
I don't want. I've changed my mind. You can ask my wife. She's like, actually, no. He does change your mind. You just have to harass the crap out of him, and make a better argument, and then I'll change my mind. And it's just like, it's the average person. This is why actually philosophy should be taught earlier, but not like bullshit philosophy, just like the argument aspect of how to like argue your point through philosophy and that, which brings up like moral relativism.
Right.
So like someone like Ben Shapiro, who is religious and hates moral relativism.
Right.
And then there's absolutism, truth, and I'm in the middle. It's like, I think for the absolute truth exists.
Yes.
We just haven't found it.
Yes. Exactly.
Now, moral relativism for humans is the argument in between. It's like, we haven't found stuff yet. So again, that variation, we need to try different stuff. Well, for everyone, and also the whole personal experience thinks it is relative, because otherwise religions would all have identical morals.
Yes.
And societies would all have identical morals. And if you say, you son of a bitch in English, people, depending on the tone, people are like, eh. But you say that into a Middle Eastern person, you're getting punched in the face, because to them, you do not talk about their mothers. But here it's like, people have a different sense of humor.
Yeah.
So it's like, well, that is moral relativism, right? So what is good? But then I think, Ben Shapiro's argument actually made me respect religion a bit more, because on the sense that a lot of people just can't handle making their own decisions. So when you have a religious guideline that's somewhat moral, and don't be an asshole, which is most good religions at the core are that, and then it keeps people in check from the animalistic nature. So that was like, oh, okay, some people need religion. It used to bother me. I'm used to be more like Hitchens, where it's like, religion is stupid.
Yeah.
Not my thing. I don't need it, not to be an asshole. A lot of people, I think, might. I don't know what your deal is, but
have you seen Hitchens debate William Lane Craig?
No. Actually, I want to listen to his book first.
Which one?
No, is it him, the atheist one? No, the selfish gene. Is that him? No, that's someone else.
That's Dawkins.
Oh,
yeah. He's the other horseman of the.
Yeah, I want to listen to it. I think their stances are obnoxious.
I agree.
But I do want to hear their.
Out of all of them, Sam Harris is, I think, the most reasonable.
His whole the anti-Trump thing was why I stopped listening.
Oh, really?
I'm like, let it go.
I don't know a whole lot, but I know that. So one of my favorite, we call them apologists.
Yeah.
Do you know what that word means?
No, not in this context, and neither will likely the all.
Okay.
So define it.
Well, a lawyer, someone who argues in favor of and defends a position, right? And we throw this around in Christian apologetics, right? Defending the faith or whatever, right? But anyways, the point is, if you say you like Hitchens, go watch William Lane Craig's debate with Hitchens on the existence of God. And it's like because they're Craig's a Christian, but Hitchens is a philosopher. And this is one thing that people need to understand when you're debating with someone is you can't just assume that what the authority that you're adhering to is an authority source of point of argument that you can make with someone else. Like, I wouldn't argue with you about truth over scripture, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't believe that the New
Well, and
Testament is inerrant and worthy of,
that, and
right? So I would never develop an argument when
also,
talking with you about that.
and when I was in Israel, if you're a religious person who's like, but it says in the book that they never read and don't care about, your
Yeah.
argument is actually shit.
No, it is because
Like,
because what you're doing is you're arguing from a different position of authority, right?
Yeah.
So what of course these professional debaters do, of
Yeah.
course, is they argue from from equal points of authority,
Mm.
which in this case between an atheist like Hitchens and a Christian like Craig is just philosophy.
Mm.
So it's a really good philosophical debate. And if you say you like Hitchens, I think you'd be
Yeah, I should see it.
very interested in that.
Crap, I forgot what I was gonna say. What was it?
What were we talking about before?
I don't know.
Priorities, morality,
Oh yeah, and moral relativism.
moral relativism.
Oh yeah, yeah. So like, I think for the sake of society,
Yeah.
a lot of people need religion for stability. Now there are
Mhm.
the conservative aspect or the where it's right is like, hey, can we all agree that thou shalt not murder is a good thing for society?
Yeah.
Right? So these conservative values, which have been proven consistently better at maintaining stable societies,
Yeah.
is the argument for conservatives. I think conservatism, or even religious or otherwise, is just we need to be a little bit slower on the uptake of new ideas as a society, because when we don't, it falls apart historically. And so you can't just shove every new stupid ass idea like radical like the race crap, CRT crap, that's
Mhm.
like easy to pick apart into the thing because we want everyone to be equal, right? And if you find new things about history, you can add that into the curriculum. You don't erase the other aspects that were established history.
Mm.
You can even teach both sides of the argument to counter each other and give a more better perspective of history. You're just making shit up because the idea of it'll equalize everything and the white man's evil, it's like you're out of your mind.
Mhm.
So like, Ben Shapiro did change my mind through argument, not using scripture,
Right. Yeah.
about,
From
okay,
a same point of authority.
for
Yeah.
a lot of people, in order for them not to lose their shit and
Uh-huh.
have some stable pockets of society, religion's okay as long as it's not harming other people. That's where, radical Islam becomes a serious problem. But at the same time, radical Islam is no different than the Inquisition. It's the same thing, different religions.
Mhm.
It's whenever you say you must believe what I believe or I'll kill you,
Right.
is where there's a problem.
Right.
Or even, and I don't like this, is proselytizing Christians
Mhm.
who go out of their way to harass people.
Mm.
I have a problem with that
Mm.
because now you're being obnoxious.
What do you mean by harassment?
Have you found Jesus? You need to find Jesus. You need to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, you wanting to lead the kneel the prayer to anyone who's welcome to at the protest. That's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But if you're just like harassing people,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
knocking at my door
Yeah.
because it's in your religion, well, that's harassing people.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
your religion is good, they'll come.
Yeah.
Right? Judaism doesn't harass nobody. And
Yeah.
so some people convert because they like it.
Yeah.
Right? And that's fine. But if it's like, you must spread the word of God, because then people will. If it's like the Mormons, who are the only group of people who've ever done this successfully and not been total douches about it, right? Or they're like, oh, okay. Like, it's still obnoxious, but at least they're nice about it. But most religions, that's where
Yeah.
you get the zealots.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Because they misinterpret, I must spread the word of God as
Yeah.
I will kill you if you don't,
Right.
right?
Well, you'd be hard pressed to find a fundamentalist evangelical who will kill you if you don't convert. But
But
I
it's
think
aggressive.
because I used to be that.
Yeah.
Right. And I also
Then you grew up.
I grew up. I mean, I had a big long journey from like a Protestant Christianity towards the Catholic Church, which is what I am now. But I
It's
also,
just so strange to me, but hey.
and why is it strange to you from your perspective?
They're the most extreme from a religious thing, like
The Catholics are most
Catholic
extreme.
Church.
Okay.
And they're not, but like let's
Okay.
say the historical break off of the Catholic Church is because
Yes.
people didn't want to be so rigid, right? Part of it, and they wanted to have the bring God into the house rather than just like.
There's part of that's
Yeah.
part of the
I mean,
reason.
again, I'm not a theologian.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
history is not that good on
Yeah.
that aspect,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like the Catholic Church tendency to control and manipulate
Yes.
things.
Well, we have a very long history of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Roman Empire never died.
No.
Yeah.
And there's so many, again, like you get into history, if you really want to learn from history truly, like you gotta be interested in the nuances,
Yeah.
right? And this show is not gonna have nearly enough time to get into those
That,
nuances.
yeah.
But I will say one thing about from the perspective of my experience of being and I would still say I am evangelical. I'm just now an evangelical Christian, Catholic rather than evangelical fundamentalist Protestant. And the difference is that um, I'm not scared of you going to hell.
Yeah.
Whereas and the reason I say I'm not scared is because
You need to be saved. Let me save you.
well, you do. I do think you need to be saved. I think we all need to be saved, and it's like I include myself in that because the Catholic position. And this is what the Reformers wanted to part of what they introduced to Christianity when Martin Luther protested was that you need to be assured, absolutely assured of your
The
salvation.
German Martin Luther,
right?
not the black Martin Luther.
Yes,
for those
not
who
yes,
don't know.
yes, not Martin Luther King Jr. Martin Luther, the priest. Actually,
Yeah.
he was a priest, right?
Yeah.
So Martin Luther, in the 1500s, 1517, the Reformation, he introduced this doctrine that of absolute assurance of salvation. So which means that basically the kind of the question is, are you in or how do you know you're in heaven? Well, you just know because of your faith in Jesus Christ, right? Whereas the Catholic position is, look, I could believe in all the right things, but I still might not be going to heaven.
Yeah.
Right? So like we don't have any like assurance of salvation, which means that we're not super prone to like get you on our side, because what we ultimately believe is as long as we do believe that God, objectively exists and that he presented himself to us through his son, Jesus Christ. But just because on your private journey, you haven't seen the truth in that doesn't mean you're damned, right? The point is that God is revealing himself to you in special ways, in true ways, in objective ways, and it's based off of how you respond to those revelations. So you can be a Jew and be saved. You can be a Muslim and be saved.
Yeah, because Jews are good no matter what, according to our religion, so it's fine.
Right. You could, but I'm saying too, like you can be an atheist and be saved, right? Because it's more because it's about not fear. It's not fear of like escaping hell, but it's about love. It's about God is love, and back to that conversation about love, the objective truth. Are you pursuing the truth to the greatest extent that your conscience is holding you accountable to? If you are, because then we can get into conversations like, what if your experience of Jesus is a bad one? What if you grew up with a pedophile priest?
Which they owes too many
Right?
of those, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, actually, you'd be surprised to know there's actually a way bigger crisis in the public school system statistically than in the Catholic Church. The reason you hear about the Catholic Church is because it's one giant organization, and so you hear if it happens in Kentucky and it happens in BC, it's like, well, it's the one organization, right? So you hear
the
more
public
about
school system is a disaster.
It is.
It's sorry, teachers, you guys suck at this point.
Yeah. So my only point is like that's the reason why these evangelical fundamentalist Christians are so passionate about is because they love you, but they're scared for you as well. So it's not like a malicious thing like that, like you might describe it.
I don't think I did a very good job sort of arguing my point. And then Ben Shapiro again made me realize this, is that when humans are fearful, it's chaos.
Yeah.
They start acting erratically and start being willing to do more and more crazy shit.
Mm-hmm.
And if you feel there's no consequences to your actions in lives, you don't care and you'll act like a wild person. So the problem that I think organized religion solved was getting people to behave better through a little bit of fear of, if you act like a total piece of crap, what if our existence is the test?
Right.
And if you act like a piece of crap, and there's more after this, you're screwed.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think a lot of religions have been bastardized away from the main point, but it was an attempt from probably some very smart people to get people to behave a little bit better, but with the threat of something after. What the Catholic Church did wrong early on was say, if you don't do what we say, then you're screwed.
Yeah.
Which is not how it should work.
Yeah.
But the idea that you should be a good person, try your best, and not act like an animal, or else there may be consequences, is no different than crime and punishment in a sense. It's that, hey, if you murder someone, there will be serious consequences.
Mm.
And people will never admit this, but I guarantee you, if there was no repercussions for murder, you'd have a crapload murder. And
Right.
people nowadays would say, "Oh, I just don't have it in me."
No, you do.
Bullshit.
You do. Totally.
I probably
There's
would
a
have done it
sleeping
myself a million times.
there's a sleeping monster in
Yeah,
all of
and
us.
people don't want to admit that.
Yeah.
And I think religion, in when it's done well, keeps people from acting like animals. And laws, when done well,
Right.
keep people from acting like animals.
Okay.
Both have the same effect: is stop being an asshole. I mean, not the sense that I said something mean to someone and they call me an asshole. It's like, even if you think John is the biggest piece of shit in the world, which a lot of people do, that's fine. I'm still leaving the world a better place going out than I did, through trying to help people and make it better and giving them skill sets. Even if my personality is offensive to people, I'm still being productive member of society. Versus I'm just running around stabbing everyone who said something mean to me because I can't handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you ran around doing that, except in progressive cities like San Francisco now, most places are like, okay, you don't play nice, you're done, there's consequences. So on a broader, more philosophical, like, hey, what if this isn't the end and there is something else after that? Maybe you shouldn't be a total, complete piece of shit. It gets those fringe people, small members of small
You're
to
right.
not actually, it keeps more people in that center than it does the extremes,
Right.
right? If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's more about the psychology of man and our propensity for great violence and maintaining large groups of people in a way that has some order to it.
Right.
Because when you have societies, religious or not, and you're starting to see this now, this is why we need to break up into smaller countries.
Mm.
When too many people don't agree in a given society, you will have a destabilized society because everyone's trying to pull it in different directions, which can be fine if you agree, okay, well, BC is going to be its own country and Alberta is going to be its own country and we're going to believe our own things and we're all going to get along other than that. Because the functioning economic values are reasonably the same. We can all live together as neighbors, but hey, Alberta wants to live like this, and BC wants to live like this, as an example. Or if California, you want to push your progressive, crazy, batshit, crazy nonsense, well, go ahead, be your own country. You technically have the ability, but I guarantee you, it's going to prove to the world that those ideas will fail, and everyone's going to leave, and you're screwed. But at least then it's compartmentalized the failure. Right? COVID showed us that this globalized, well, only China builds this stuff. It's not a good idea. Now California eats a giant dick and the rest of the country's fine. It's gonna if they keep up their crap.
I know. Yeah.
It's the elite Karens who think they know best but have no idea what, you know.
Who is still living in California? Like,
Lots of poor people, unfortunately. The people who suffer
right.
are the poor people,
No,
by the way.
you're right, actually. Totally.
These lunatic
People who
elite,
can't afford to move away.
I mean, it is actually easier to move in America from one place to another than it would be in somewhere like Canada. But it's
So you're saying it's easier to move from California to Florida than it is to move from BC to Alberta?
maybe, I don't know. I haven't done either, so
Okay.
I might be talking about it in my ass. But it's just like their country is built on, I can get up and move to another state with different values that match mine.
Yeah.
Canada is more like
An amorphous blob.
you're going to get the same value, legally speaking and structurally speaking, if I go to Ontario than here. Yes, the provinces have some different rules.
Yeah.
But like you see how Florida versus New York policy right now is completely different. Right? So it's easy. I think what I mean to say is it's easier in America to get up and move to somewhere that you want to move that values your ideas better.
Right.
Than Canada, because there's federalism here in a way that's different than there. And it's just like all the laws, criminal laws are all the same, and a lot of the approaches are all the same. Even if stuff like healthcare is managed provincially, it's still fundamentally under the auspices of the Canadian Doctors Association.
Yeah.
So.
And not even that, but just like, let's say Saskatchewan was everything I want it to be politically.
Yeah. Who wants to live in
I've lived in BC for 27 and a half years.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
I psychologically can't move anywhere. It would be so hard
Well,
because it's so great here.
that's the thing.
Beautiful, like the temperature, just the.
Well, that's the thing is
yeah,
if Canadians don't wake up,
yeah,
I'm leaving.
right.
I'm moving.
I want to too.
I don't
want
want to
to.
leave BC. I like it here.
Yeah.
I think it's like, especially in an asteroid hits the Earth, having a property up in the Rockies in BC, you're golden. You'll
Yeah.
survive the flood. You're high enough that you can deal with stuff. You can get
Yeah.
under the bedrock. You can hunt stuff. Like, it's a
Yeah.
good place to live. There's
Yeah.
all sorts of things. But ideologically, it's like, dude, if Canadians continue to be blind and continue to say, just stay apolitical in the sense that they're not even interested in what's going on.
Don't talk about religion or politics.
And like, I met a woman in a bar who was like, I was always voting conservative. I got a divorce. Fuck that guy. I voted for Trudeau because he has nice hair.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, I'm not making this up. This happened.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I feel like
Those people shouldn't be allowed to vote.
But I feel like that's the
Sorry.
average voter in Canada.
Yeah.
The average voter in Canada votes on feelings. It's like someone, probably Rebel, went in the streets and was asking people in Toronto, why do you vote Liberal? Do you like Trudeau? It's like, no, I hate Trudeau, but I've always voted Liberal, so I'm always going to vote Liberal.
And this is why I think we do need reform in our electoral.
By the way,
program.
that dickhead got elected on the basis that he was going to bring in electoral reform.
Exactly.
And as soon as he realized he had majority, he's like, nope.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the Conservatives would start winning a lot more.
Yes.
If that happened.
Because like, if you even just changed it, forget about the Senate, whatever. But even if you just made it so like, we're gonna have two people that you vote for. You're gonna vote for the who's gonna represent your constituency and who you want to be prime minister. It's like, I would vote for the PPC person, and then I would vote for Polyev as prime minister, right? Let's say you're any number of those liberals that you just mentioned. They would vote for whoever their liberal person is that they want to represent, but they want someone else to be prime minister, right?
That's actually an idea I had. Is we vote for our MPs, we see who forms a major government, and maybe the cabinet seats is representative based on the parties, and then each person puts their party leader up, and then you vote for who's actually the prime minister,
right?
Of
something like that, right?
Because you're basically like, the party's saying this is our leader, and then you get who you get, and it's like, maybe the conservative MPs have the majority, but their leader's terrible, and the public is like, no, I actually don't like that guy, and maybe we want the other guy and that way there's more balance. And
even just on a paper trail, like, most liberals did not vote for Trudeau. They voted for whoever their and Trudeau wasn't even voted to be the prime minister. He was voted to represent his riding. But because I
hate the fact you can be prime minister and a riding representative. I don't like
exactly
that.
That's exactly what I'm getting at here, because now this guy has executive powers to just invoke the Emergencies Act, even though
he doesn't.
Well, that's what he did. Right.
But that shows you why he's an authoritarian lunatic. Even if it's just Gerard Butts telling him what to do. If you don't know who that is, his little.
I've heard the name, but again,
it's
he's like
his
Soros
best friend.
to me.
It's his best friend who he grew up with.
Really?
And he's a political piece of shit
okay.
who was involved in the party politics, but he publicly was thrown out due to one of the numerous scandals that they were involved in. And he's still the puppet master because he still talks to Trudeau.
Interesting.
Right? And so
Gerald, I hear that name all the time, Gerald Butts, but
this is not the first time he has unilaterally, undemocratically done something and hid behind, like, his order in council, the Privy Council. It's like a small group of the cabinet ministers, and nobody can get access to that information. Courts have said, we want to see what you decide. He's like, nope, don't have to. I don't have to tell you nothing. Allegedly, the reason why he did the Emergency Act is because CBC analysts told them that this is what you should do.
Wow.
And it's like, can we see what evidence that you used to invoke this Emergency Act? No. Why not? Cabinet privilege. This is like the millionth time he's done this.
Yeah.
They're hiding behind these stupid, archaic laws that protect them because of, quote, national security's Winnipeg lab thing. Nope. National security cabinet privilege. But actually, even NDP MPs are like, hey, we want to know what happened here. Nope.
I can't wait to see this play out, man. I'm so excited, honestly.
Even in the
see
States,
what happens.
A Senate committee can get access to top secret stuff, and they can't just sit there and say, no presidential privilege. Even if a president does a executive order, technically the Congress can still override that. Executive orders can be overridden by Congress
Wow.
if enough people vote one way.
Yeah.
They just, don't because you need the votes, but still, there's the mechanism to stop that. And Canada is like, no cabinet privilege. Nope. I am doing what I believe in democracy. Hey, asshole, you were multiple times unilaterally made a decision that no one asked for, except your stupid CBC polls,
Yeah.
who at this point needs to not be a national broadcaster
No.
anymore.
That needs to be the first thing
Harper
any
did it. He defunded them.
well, he cut
That's
the
why
budget.
the media.
He
Well,
didn't
yeah,
defund them. He cut the budget.
yeah, which is why the media
Which
hates
is why
him.
they hate. Yeah.
It's biased at its most.
But we need
brutal
$0.
Yeah.
$0 going to them.
Well,
Not even grants. Like just nothing.
And now they want to do what Australia did, which is tech giants have to pay all these failing businesses in the media because the media is allegedly doing the work. Hey, dickheads, you're all getting it from AP because none of you do anything anymore, and you're basically useless mouthpieces for your governments. So no, you don't get funding. Do a successful business model that people care about, and people will watch you.
I know artists because I'm a musician, right? And it's like, how do artists survive?
Yeah.
Most of us are us. I'm not a working artist at all, but it's all government grants, right?
Yeah.
It's like if your art was worth it, people would buy it.
Yes. Well, that's
right?
it. I agree with that. This whole idea of Canadian content, it's like make good content.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, small town prairie, like Corner Gas is a famous Canadian show.
Yeah.
It's an okay show.
Yeah, I laughed a few times.
I'm sorry, that's not
Doesn't
going to
stack
succeed
up.
globally.
Yeah, exactly.
It just will not. I'm sorry, I don't, and it doesn't even help that Trudeau himself is like, there's no such thing as a Canadian identity anymore. And he said something like that once.
Yeah.
And it's just
And
like,
there
okay,
should be.
good content, as opposed
but organically.
to Schitt's Creek.
Yeah.
Hilarious show. I watched it before it was popular. It's funny.
Oh, really? My wife tried to get me that. I'm not really.
Well, when they do get into the whole game marriage thing, which I don't have a problem with, but it's like it gets a little bit like I think you're pushing this a little bit too hard.
Yeah?
But the writing is really good. That's why it got famous in the States. They picked it up because of the gay marriage
right,
thing.
Of course.
But the acting is hilarious.
Yeah.
The writing is good.
Yeah.
And it took off. It's like if you make good content that can be relatable, it will take off anywhere. It's like Squid Games. You see Squid Games?
No.
You might. I don't know if you like the gratuitous violence. I think it's fine, but
I'm fine with it too.
Oh, yeah.
No, I don't have Netflix.
They made a good show that just went
and it's
exploded.
It's not in English, right? Is it subtitles?
Korean.
It's Korean.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
Great. Make good content.
Yeah.
Stop with your bullshit.
People want
handouts.
art. Movie, film, and TV are like the most consistent businesses to last through any kind of like economic collapse.
And
like people want it.
An example is like I do this. I don't have 20 million listeners.
Yeah.
I have enough that. Well, you can't make money on a podcast in Canada unless you're huge.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
You have to like really finagle. But it's because they like you're not in America. There's all these rules and anyway,
right.
They can't you get the advertising dollars like you can in Canada due to legal rules, which is good and bad. But it's like I do this because I like conversation. People want to listen. You either do it because you love it, or you do it because you're good at it and can make money at it.
Yeah.
If you're in that between, don't start yelling at people.
Yeah.
To pay you to do shit nobody cares about.
Yeah.
Do you love it enough that you want to keep doing it?
Yeah.
Or are you good enough that people want to listen to you?
Right.
Both can be true, but if you're screaming that I need support, you give me money, blah blah, I'm Canadian, you suck.
Yeah. I grew up with learning piano, writing music, and I wrote like a whole hour and a half heavy metal, symphonic orchestra, classical soundtrack, blah 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 of the gospel, right? It's like, but I didn't do that for money. I didn't get grants in it. It's like I literally just did it because it was a expression of myself. And did it take a lot of time and effort and energy that I could have been putting towards a job or something? Yeah. But like I felt so passionate about it. I needed to do it or die, right?
It's like
that's what art needs to be.
Those musicians that are like, I'm not going to sell out. I'm like, that's fine. Just know you're not going to make money.
Exactly.
And that's
fine.
It's
fine.
But it's like if you want to make a living at this, you're going to have to break your principles a little bit. Otherwise, you're not going to make money.
Yes.
Like I had someone I know who's like, he had a band and he's just like screaming into the microphone. I can't even understand what he's saying. And he's like, it's art. I'm like,
yes.
There's like 10 people listening to you, man.
But,
okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Just so you know. So you either love it.
Yeah.
or you realize that if you want to make money as like a composer or a musician, you're going to have to write other stuff for people that they want. And both can be true at the
Yeah.
same time. That's actually my favorite Ben Shapiro quote is two things can be true at the same
Yeah,
time.
it's true. Yeah, exactly. The
You can
sky
love
can
it
be
and no
blue
one
and
will
clouds
want
can
to
be
buy it.
gray.
And, I think that's the pay attention to me. I need special treatment. I have to do this. If people like what you're doing or not. And if you want to broaden your audience, then you do have to tailor it a little bit accordingly.
Right.
And have it. That's why I said, like, Tucker Carlson, he's got a massive audience.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, cut the snark, you'll have a bigger audience.
Right.
Stop the theatrics, you'll have a bigger audience.
I mean, he doesn't really need a bigger audience though. Like he's annihilating
Still
everyone
not
else.
as big as Rogan.
That's true. Yeah.
Because some people will only
True.
listen to the MMA episodes because they hate the science. And some people will listen to the other arguments. I listen to all of it because I can relate to all of it.
Yeah.
Right? But I know people, like, and we all had that one episode where I'm like, that fucking person he had on is such an idiot.
Who can you name one? Because then I'm gonna go listen to that one.
Oh crap! What's her name?
I like the more intellectual stuff.
The RT reporter who was shitting on Israel.
Oh.
And
okay.
she said a few things. I just can't. Abby Martin. She said some
I
things that
remember.
I know.
I don't remember her,
I
but
know
I know
to
her.
be factually incorrect.
Gotcha. Okay. I think I've seen clips of that.
And Rogan he's suggestible. He often will follow whoever the latest person on a given topic that he heard.
Right.
He's getting better at it.
Sure.
But historically, and
I'm like that too. Someone says something, it's got to be right.
Yeah.
Someone says another thing, oh, that's got to be
he
right.
has had very few people on defending Israel's position other than Ben Shapiro and his friend Ari Shafir. And
Right,
Ari Shafir
yeah.
is a comedian, so he doesn't really have all the
Yeah,
details.
yeah.
And Ben Shapiro cannot commit the 10 hours he needs on Rogan
Yeah.
to actually assess this out.
Yeah.
Granted, Shapiro is a bit militant on that. As someone who's been there and served there and understands the culture there to a degree, and not enough to want to live there permanently because I'm too Canadian. But
Right.
a lot of what people say about Israel is false, just on a factual level.
I was surprised when Israel did the whole 4 shots
Corruption.
corruption
There's
because
two things.
Benjamin Netanyahu was in my eyes an awesome conservative.
Corrupt, though. He's corrupt.
Really?
Yeah. His deal he signed with Pfizer is why they pushed it so much.
Wow.
You have to ask yourself, how in the hell did he get vaccines before anyone from Pfizer? It's because of the contract he signed. And someone leaked it. That's how people know it. It's basically, we will record all medical data for you and give it to you. Any data we have, we will just give it to you. So they became a giant research state. That's one thing.
Wow.
And it was a political move because he was fighting for prime minister, which he subsequently lost. The new prime minister, I forgot his name, is religious.
Okay.
But the religious view on Jews, which I experienced in Israel, is weird. They value the Jewish life so much that one death is too much. And I hate zeroism. I hate it. It's not effective.
Same.
It's silliness.
No.
So you had the political class who was saying, we made this decision, we have to stick with it because we don't want to look stupid. And then you had the religious or the groups of people like, nobody can die from this. I'm sorry, death is part of life.
Yeah.
And people are going to die. You want to minimize it, but you guys didn't really do that, it turns
There's a
out.
difference between loving life and fearing death.
Yeah.
They're
And
not the same thing.
Zeroism is absurd because even from again, first principles, conservation of energy, the amount of energy you're going to take to save that last life is so absurd on a community basis.
Yeah.
It's destructive. And that's where a lot of these people have been with their policies. It's due to corruption. What they're saying and why they're doing it are two different things.
Yeah.
We're saving lives. Nah, you're doing it for political reasons. And then you destroy everything just to save that one last life. And it's like, no, I'm sorry. The moment, and I haven't looked at the numbers, but say Omicron, the moment it's equal to or less than the average death flu or around that, we're done here.
Yeah.
And even before, I think they were over exaggerating it. I won't get into the weeds on that one too much. I could, but
was about modules or not modules, models
died of COVID or with COVID.
Oh yeah. Well, they only
That's
recently in BC have finally acknowledged it because it's convenient because
'cause
most
it
of their
got leaked.
hospitalizations.
Bonnie Henry is a lying sack of crap.
Yeah.
And bullshit. You were kind during this. You're a manipulative, narcissistic person, and I don't like people like you.
Yeah.
You should not
Fair
be in
enough.
power.
Fair enough.
Even if Horgan was the one making a lot of the decisions and she's just a pawn, you know better.
Yeah.
Because she wrote in her book that she didn't agree with a lot of it or something along those lines.
Exactly.
It's like, then have some moral fortitude
No
and say
principles.
no. Well, then
Exactly.
someone also just replaced me. That's even worse. It's like, You go on record as
Yeah.
someone that at that time the public really
With
respects,
influence,
with
exactly.
influence, and we got a different story here. You're
Yeah.
a coward. Sorry.
No,
It's just
exactly.
like these
It's all about the
people,
paycheck. That's
the
it.
paycheck and their legacy.
Yep.
You know, with Francis Collins and those email leaks, who is the head of the NIH, Fauci's boss. A lot of scientists just love him because he. It now if Francis Collins was on Lex Friedman, and I think that if he'd been the front man instead of Fauci, it would have gone very different. Because Fauci sounds like just a piece of shit most of the time.
Yeah.
Francis Collins talks very nicely. But he lied, and it's about protecting their legacy and their friends. It's like, do you know who Michael Osterholm is?
No.
He's flip-flopped throughout this whole damn thing.
Yeah.
But he's like a virologist, epidemiologist. He's been on Rogan multiple times. Last time he was on Rogan was a few weeks ago, and I'm like, dude, they got him. They got him because the lab leak topic came up, and the previous times he'd come on, he's bringing facts and data and and all this stuff, and this time he was like, the lab leak thing is ridiculous, and and when he was pressed on why, it's, well, I trust my colleagues.
Huh.
And
What's
you're
his
like,
name?
Michael Osterholm or something.
Okay.
He was the advisor to the Biden administration until he started telling them some of their policies are nonsense, and then they got rid of him.
So then why is he got then? If he's gotten rid of, why
Because
is he
some of
got?
these people believe so much in scientists are infallible, and
Right.
science is infallible, and we are infallible, and why
Right.
would anyone lie about anything? I trust them. They're
Yeah.
my colleagues.
Yeah.
Do you need me to lay out the argument that there's a massive paper trail to you guys, or are you just so stuck on the science, my colleagues, we can't do anything that makes science look bad or our work look bad?
Right. Well, they're all nerds who were
Yeah.
bullied in high school,
Yep, a lot of them.
who have a spot of glory,
Mm.
and now they're taking revenge on the jocks
Yeah.
who are now truckers.
Some of them.
Right?
But yeah, I know that analogy is what I think is a lot of scientists are socially awkward weirdos. A lot of the scientists who will actually be honest with you, the virologists, some of them at the start were everywhere and they quietly got shuffled out. These are socially awkward people who, I remember listening to this person who said at the beginning, masks don't work, that everyone's going to get this. We're just going to have to learn to live with this. It's fine. And she was right the whole time.
Yeah.
But she was a little overweight, didn't have a very good oratate.
Yeah.
Not a
Not
good
someone you'd
orator.
put in front of the camera.
No.
Yeah.
Now at the time she said, masks don't work, and I was like, hold on a second. But we were also being publicly told that it was not airborne, and at that time I was like, of course you should wear masks
Right.
if it's not airborne, if it's just spit.
Right.
Oh, and then they knew it was airborne the whole damn time. She knew it was airborne.
Hold on though. Didn't McCullough or whatever his name was, he was on Rogan. He said that you cannot transmit this asymptomatically. It is not airborne.
It was an error in timing. Wait, the first time? Maybe I'm mixing it up.
Well, okay, so I can't pronounce his last name.
Peter McCullough?
Peter McCullough. He comes on Joe Rogan in December, and he says that you can't pass this asymptomatically. It's not airborne. He said this.
Well, it was airborne, but at that time, here's what I meant. If he in fact said it's not airborne, we need a Jamie. Then that was wrong. If he's saying you can't transmit asymptomatically, that was correct up until Omicron. And so what a lot of people have trouble, I've noticed, is they're having trouble. They're using COVID-19 as a generic thing, and they can't differentiate between the different variants because what worked for Alpha doesn't work for Omicron.
Yeah.
Delta, Alpha, Delta were similar enough. More deadly.
Alpha was a variant.
Yes.
That's the UK variant, right? It was Alpha?
Yeah,
okay,
but that was the one they were freaking out about. Here's my thing is I think whatever was released from that lab, bodies probably were dropping a lot quicker, and then it evolved already, and then by the time it got to Alpha, it was nowhere near as bad. And they're like, well, China's not playing nice with us. They won't give us the information. It's like, some of you dickheads, there was a British scientist and Francis Collins were involved in working with that lab, so you're lying.
Yeah.
You're lying. And so on the general public, back to scientific illiteracy is, well, if you're just in your head, COVID-19 is COVID-19, I don't understand all these Greek letters. What is going on? Well, we're going to have a problem because Omicron, I got it a while ago, right? And I survived, and it was like a flu. But observationally, I have never seen anything spread that fast. It was crazy. Like, someone who didn't know they were sick gave it to me who was vaccinated, by the way. So
Right.
vaccinated people can spread it.
Boosted people can spread
Gave
it.
it to
Yeah.
absolutely everybody, and it's like, oh, you're contagious. It's like, okay, but then within the same 2 or 3 week period in Vancouver, I was hearing everybody was getting it. Everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, so yes, Omicron is probably the most like contagious thing I have ever seen in my lifetime, but I don't know anyone who died of it.
Right.
In fact, I don't know anyone who died of any of them. Because in BC, most people were in the old folks' homes. So unless you knew someone in the
Yeah.
old folks' homes, I don't know anyone who died. I do know personally people who had negative side effects that are serious from the
Right.
vaccines.
Right.
Though.
From the
I
vaccines.
do know personally.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
not conspiracy. I know personally
Okay.
people who had a wide variety of
Yeah.
bad
Yeah.
symptoms, worse than anyone I know who had COVID.
Oh, but that's correlation, not causation.
Of course.
when it's the vaccine, it's correlation.
Yeah.
When it's the virus, it's causation.
I know what they're doing. They're playing a
Yeah.
math game. They're playing a math game.
Okay.
And math can be art if you know how to manipulate it.
Yeah.
And it's like,
It's
well,
true.
how
It's
much
true.
did all these people who got vaccinated, well, we helped a lot of people. And it's like, well, you actually can't say that because imagine a world where we did nothing.
Yeah.
We need that world to compare the data to say.
No, exactly.
And we can't do that.
Yeah.
So you're saying things that are actually impossible to prove truthful, as in, did this actually save lives?
Yeah. Well, it's funny you bring
as much as you say it does, because I think
Yeah.
you're screwing with the numbers here.
It's funny you bring the math game up because I play the math game too, but in a legitimate way. Where if you look at the
when you do it, it's legitimate.
Yeah, when I do it, it's legitimate. No. But just the simple principle. Both sides of the equation need to equate.
Yeah.
Right. So when you look at the Pfizer trial data and it shows
Which
you,
they still won't release all of it.
They still don't really solve it, but what is released in the New England Journal of Medicine,
Yeah.
if you look at the tables of what of its effects, right? Okay, yes, it's effective of decreasing your illness response to COVID-19. But look at all the other things it does, increasing of heart illnesses, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, let's do the equations here.
And you know what
if you're
they'll
going
say?
if you're going to accept one part of that table, you need to accept
The other.
all of
well,
the
it's
parts
like
of the
you know what they
table.
say about the myocarditis is, we can treat it. It's not a big deal. And now they have permanent damage to their heart.
Yeah.
Just because you can treat it so that they can leave the hospital doesn't mean they don't now have permanent damage to their heart.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
a different kind of myocarditis. Is it though?
Right. Well, you can still get myocarditis from it is a side effect or symptom, what have you, of COVID.
Yes.
But the point is like, are we actually decreasing overall illness and mortality with these vaccines? That there's no proof of that.
There's
no proof of that.
The only evidence is they're spreading.
We need proof of
they're
that.
spreading. They could make the argument that they did spread out the infection. Like eventually everyone's going to get this. We now know this. Even if
Right.
alpha was still around, it would just actually be much slower. Eventually everyone would get it.
Right. But the golden rule in medicine is do no harm, right? So you need to actually
Which I believe they're violating flagrantly
Yes.
as doctors by pretending like treatments don't exist that do, and also
Yes.
not actually giving proper medical
Why
help
are we
to people.
why are we dying on this hill of vaccines? Like, why aren't we looking at that's it?
A good vaccine is a good tool.
Yeah,
That works.
it's a tool.
But you have to look at it as a per vaccine, like on each case, on
Yeah.
a case basis, not as a generic thing.
Yeah,
Because can we please talk about what happened with the polio vaccine and that one company that screwed up and killed a bunch of people?
Oh, see, I don't know anything about this.
Yeah, 20,000 people died because one company
Wow.
totally screwed up, and people
Yeah.
died as a direct result of their vaccine. Now, the overall polio vaccine, once they fixed that problem, has done some good, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you can't pretend like that one company didn't just kill a bunch of people because they didn't do their proper job.
Well, didn't we take away J&J for a period of time?
And by the way, if you
Right?
actually
Like-
look at the numbers, there were comparatively even Ben Shapiro was like they shouldn't have pulled J&J. Yes, people were getting blood clots, and yes, all the countries pulled it because they saw it as the risk was too high. But based on that math and that logic, that it's breaking that risk threshold, and so did the Pfizer one. So did all of
Right.
them. They broke, and that's one of the arguments people seem to ignore is under normal circumstances, none of these would have been passed because the side effects are too high. And most drugs would, have massive lawsuits if they were doing this. But again, they'll be like, yeah, but look at all the billions and billions of people that we helped. We've given them no problems. Okay, that is true, but it's still over that limit we'd previously set. So are
Yeah.
you resetting the limit of what's acceptable
Yeah.
to
And that's
damage?
what we've seen. We've seen them redefine everything,
Yeah,
redefine the
which is not
definition of
okay.
vaccine, redefine the expectations of childhood development
Yeah.
now, right?
Oh yeah, that's disgusting.
Oh,
So if people don't know, the CDC
yeah.
lowered the standard of expectation of reading and cognitive skills for kids at a certain age
Cognitive
because
skills.
cognitive skills at a certain age because mask development screwed up kids. So they're just like, oh, we'll just lower the bar then.
Yeah.
And they do it quietly, knowing most people. If I'm a parent now who didn't know this, I'm gonna look it up and be like, oh, they need to know this much. Well,
Right.
before the pandemic, it was like 20 points more than that was the
Yeah.
minimum standard, and you have
It is
cognitive learning.
so important. This is what happens when we yeah. My wife is a sign language interpreter,
Yeah,
and so facial features and expression
that must have been real fun.
is like the grammar of
Yeah,
sign language. It's like the inflection of sign language, right?
right.
So it's like you need to have facial expressions for that. Like that's just a one part of just simply saying that, like, no, you like your body language matters. People seeing your face matters. Like, this is me. This is part of who I am. And when we take our culture to this kind of like Gnostic point of view, like, part of my physical body isn't part of who I am.
Yeah,
It doesn't have anything to do with defining me.
yeah,
We actually devalue ourselves
yeah,
because no, yes, you have a spiritual element. Yeah, you have a cognitive element, but you have a physical element. Like,
yeah.
that's part of who you are. It's not like you're just this mind controlling this vessel, right? I know maybe Elon Musk wants to change the definition
Yeah,
of
we'll
that,
see.
but as it is now, what I believe is like, no, we're embodied people, right? We're the physical matters. Your
Yeah.
face
Well, and it's
matters.
like, well, I think I could not understand. Like people interpret the way I talk sometimes so much worse than they should because I've said stuff and someone else has said these, but people, oh, and then I say it, they're like, you're a jerk, and then
Right.
and then my wife pointed out it's your facial expressions,
Right.
and I'm like,
And it's funny. I think that's
what
how we get
facial
along because
expressions?
I'm one of those people who's very expressive with my
Yeah,
face, but my family tells me that I'm like on the spectrum.
yeah.
So
Oh,
it's
I'm
like,
probably on this spectrum.
yeah. So it's like I relate to. I don't like it. Doesn't offend. I don't get those things from you.
Yeah.
I take a whole lot more information personally from the actual words being said rather than the
Well, yeah. Like I'm
expressions.
not
Right.
really looking at your face. I'm listening
Right.
because I'm probably on the spectrum.
Right.
Because I can't read this
Right.
very well until
Yeah.
the tone of the voice changes. And then I hear it and I'm like, ah,
Right.
crap.
There you go.
Right. But that's what my wife was saying. It's your facial expressions are really offensive. And I'm like, it's my face. Like, what do you want from me? But
Yeah.
most people who are not on the spectrum, they rely heavily on those facial expressions. So
Right.
if your facial expression, tone of voice, and all that doesn't match what's in the middle of the bell curve, people
Right.
are like, I'm like the same
Yeah.
thing I said you're offended by, but they just said it 5 minutes later and you laughed at it. What the argument, the logic is the exact same, but what's the difference?
Right.
It's people are responding subconsciously to things and they're not actually responding to the merit of what's being said.
Yeah.
They're not actually
Yeah.
deep in what's going on. It's just like generic responses.
And there's value in being receptible and responsive to the affective, right? Absolutely. We do need that. But there's also value in just the cognitive, right? The what is plain and blank. And I think just the more balanced you are, obviously, is the
Yeah.
more healthy position.
Yeah, and there may be some biochemistry thing. Like for
Yeah.
me, I have admitted before I took some illicit drugs that are totally fine in BC. Nobody cares here.
Right.
That fixed a lot of problems, and you're starting to see in the scientific literature, it works.
Mm.
Some of these drugs
Mm.
that are considered illicit but work far better than any pharmaceutical.
Right.
People have known about them for a long time, and they're quite enjoyable to take. To be frank, as long as you do it safely.
Yeah.
And it's just like sometimes people have there's something here. Now, this is where I get philosophical on this.
Okay, let's do it.
Is it wrong or is it just socially acceptable? Because if you're
Right.
living in the woods by yourself
Right.
like a lunatic, does it even
Yes.
matter? Because you're sustaining yourself.
Yes.
But then it's certain behaviors are frowned upon and unacceptable in society.
Yeah.
So it's like the progressives again. It's like, oh, you're on a different spectrum? That's cool. Do your thing. Stop yelling at me about it that I don't understand it.
Right.
Right? I don't scream at people because they don't like me. I'm like, well, I guess you don't like me, and this is why I'm just developing a world where I'm comfortable being by myself then.
Right.
It's just, and I'm fine with that. And it's like, if you really, really want to fit in, first of all, it's exhausting, but you have to play these games. And it's like, for me, it's like, I'm okay with being different. And if people don't like me for that, that's fine. I'm not going to demand the world bend to my will. Most people are just like, I don't want to be around you. You're mean, or you're this, or you're that. And it's like, okay, fine. Instead of trying to bend the whole world to make myself fit in, it's like, you don't fit in. Unless you're in that average bell curve of human beings, you won't, by just practical reality.
Mm-hmm.
Because you need to be okay with that, uh, being different, and that's like part of the human experiences. We're so driven to fit in, but there's that bell curve. It's actually the extremes on that side, not Bob
Yeah.
and the Rock, but this one, that it you'll change the world
Yeah.
because you're willing to risk stuff, and you are different. You think different. You'll come up with different solutions. But if you're screaming at that 80% to treat you the way you want to be treated, it's not going to go well.
Right.
And you're going to create a disaster for everyone because you're just antagonizing everybody.
Mm.
It doesn't work. I know I've antagonized people. One of the issues is I didn't understand. I don't know what I'm doing because I don't get that stuff, and nobody wants to tell me. So mentorship is super important, because if you are a child who's abnormal for whatever reason, whether for good or for bad, you need people to sort of guide you, because you're not thinking like other people. It's not a bad thing. It's just, you are not like the rest of them. That's fine. So you need guidance to how to figure out how to do your thing, but also work with the rest of it. And the failure, go back to the failure of parenting, failure of the school systems to properly mentor and not push stupid ideology. You're getting lots of lost kids. Do you know who Eric Weinstein is?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So when he still did his podcast, I wish he did. He was saying that you're getting a lot of kids who fall through the cracks, who are extremely intelligent in the system, because they're either not getting super good grades, so the teachers don't, or they're antagonistic towards the teacher, like I was. So they're like, I don't care about this student. I'm not going to streamline, because if you don't like dot your I's, cross your T's, do exactly as they're asking, and be a good little student, even if you're smarter than the people there, unless you're already like able to show it to people, which not everyone is, because a lot of people struggle in school, didn't do well in school, hated school, and then went on to do amazing things. But because the system doesn't want to realize that sometimes different is better, not better, but it's going to be productive member of society, they don't get the mentorship they need, and it's a waste. If you don't have the parents to do it and the system doesn't pick it up, you've lost, as Herrick was saying, like the human resource capital, the brain power. It's gone.
Right.
Because now they've just spent all their lives with bad behavior or bad tendencies, and they're not being as productive as they could have been if people had just realized, oh yeah, they're different. That kid needs to kind of do its own thing, and they're fine. But everyone else should be in that sort of structured environment.
Yeah.
We're starting to sort of realize this now, but the system doesn't want it to.
Yeah.
They just refuse to accept. I'm sorry, most of your teachers suck.
Yeah.
Can anyone honestly say all your teachers in high school were amazing?
No. No.
Most of them should not be there.
Right.
They should not be there.
Totally.
And if teachers want to get paid more, which I'm fine,
Yeah.
half of you need to get fired.
Yeah.
And you need to be not only really good at what you do, but relate to the people you're talking to.
Yeah.
And if you're not one of those teachers, find something else to do.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of teachers are there because they failed at everything else.
Mm.
So they just go teach. And then you get the people who are like, I love kids. I love teaching. Sorry, but I don't want you teaching my child. But I love it. No. It's my child. You don't get to do that.
Yeah.
You're screwing my kid up.
Yeah.
Right. And it's even worse in the States. It sounds like most teachers don't even want to be there anymore.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're advocating for all of these, to keep in
the union.
perpetuity,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Like the
disgusting.
Zoom classroom.
I don't
class Zoom.
I don't understand how you can consider yourself loving children and be an educator and be advocating for this nonsense
Yeah.
that is wrecking the children. To be fair, unions aren't there for the children. That's not their. That's
for their
technically not
teachers.
the job.
Totally.
There's a problem with that. When you're not actually there for the children, you're there for the teachers and the political clout. Because NDP and BC, one of their biggest donors is teachers unions. Who's one of the biggest Democratic the donors across the U.S.? Teachers unions.
Yeah.
Unions in general.
Yeah.
Even though they cleared their policies no longer represent the working class.
Mm-hmm.
It's a conflict of interest at the highest level, and you're no longer there for the people anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm not anti-union anymore. I used to be, but I'm also not like pro. No,
Anti.
like really, that's too many antis. I'm not. I used to be like screw unions, but they have their places sometimes if there aren't mechanisms in government and
Yeah.
structure to fix some problems. But they end up becoming these giant political machines that are not useful.
Well, that's my nuance too. It's like even as a conservative, I'm pro union.
Yeah.
I just think that unions should be subject to the free market like any other
Or
organization
even
and
like this
of
idea
people.
that you just strength through numbers. Obviously you found that in the protest, strength through numbers, it's
Yeah.
a thing, but there's a certain point when you're just combining all these different fields and trades that aren't even related to each other in giant unions, because strength with numbers is like, if a big one corporation has its own union, that's cool.
Mhm.
Clearly the corporation didn't know how to treat its workers properly.
Mm.
And the governments were not doing one of their jobs, which is make sure corporations aren't treating people like shit. I think that's one of their jobs, government. Um, but when you start getting these giant unions that represent all these different fields all over the place, it's like that's a political party now.
Mm.
That's not protecting the workers. Like if you're fields that like the what's the goal of teacher to enrich the next generation? Well, the union doesn't care about that, but they'll say they do. It's like,
Right.
well, doesn't seem like it at
Yeah.
all. In America, it's worse. Canada, it's not as bad.
Yeah.
Israel didn't screw that up, by the way. The kids
No.
were in school the whole time
Oh wow.
because the data
Interesting.
said kids were not an
Well, yeah,
issue.
I know. Yeah. I I don't know if I'm going to be able to put my kids into I've
We can go
no
longer, but
way.
YouTube will. It's like 3 hours, I think.
Oh, is it?
It's like that's 2 hours and 54 minutes. Yeah, we can go longer though. It's no big
Yeah,
deal.
whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, all good.
Um, yeah, I'm not sending my kids to public
Yeah.
school when I have them.
Apparently how it works here cuz I'm, new to the whole even the idea of like private school thing like with cuz we have Catholic schools here in
Mm.
BC.
One of the best ones is right around the corner.
Which one is it?
I don't know the name. I don't care.
Okay.
It's just I know it's there.
Yeah. Well, apparently like you can opt out like you get a tax deduction
Mm.
if you like basically the government instead of having you pay like part of your taxes that go towards the public school system if you're not putting
Mm.
your kid in the public school system it actually goes towards paying for your private school system
Mm.
essentially. So that's pretty cool. I mean I don't have kids yet so I have no
I don't
idea
know,
how that
Russ.
actually
No,
how it works.
and increasingly, even here and in the States, people are pulling their kids out of the public school system.
Yeah.
But again, you have to be a parent that's there. You need at least one parent there actively teaching and working with the kids because you can get, there's a syllabus in BC that they have to meet the milestones. And I found uh, private homeschool kids do better academically, usually.
Okay.
If it's
Yeah.
parents who care. Where they struggle is the argument, oh, we need to socialize them. I socialize them. Okay, well, then make your kid do stuff with other people.
Right. Yeah.
Like, and I was thinking about for me, martial arts, sure, I'm going to teach my kid martial arts, no problem. But I'll probably want to enroll them in someone else's kids program when they're old enough.
Right.
I'd be like, you go learn, listen to this person, go.
Yeah.
Because then they're getting the same stuff from another authority figure.
Yeah.
So obviously it has to be someone you trust.
Yeah.
But that's how you socialize them.
Yeah.
Right?
Or take them to learn what your local public school recess is and
Schools wouldn't allow
they wouldn't
that.
let that?
No way.
Come on.
They are too controlling about who's on the property and who's not.
That's so
But that's why you have
interesting.
parent groups and it's like a lot of work because then you have to, for the sake of your kid, you're like, I hate these people, but I'm bringing my kids, right? But I think it's important to find groups of people, and also unsupervised kids play is important in a safe environment. Obviously, you don't leave them with
Unsupervised kids? Yeah. Yeah. Let them do stupid stuff.
no, but it has to be. You can't helicopter them. The evidence is coming out that kids actually need time with other kids when parents aren't watching.
Right. Okay.
Right. But you have to teach them, like, listen, like, if they do this, you need to tell me. If this happens, you need to tell me
Yeah.
so that bullying doesn't happen or whatever. But they need to do that because they need to figure out on their own
Yeah.
how to interact with other peers their own age without doing the looking at the parent, looking for approval or not approval.
It's almost like it's like developing integrity too. And
Well, integrity, but
right?
also, I mean, there's a certain age, like where maybe 5 and up, you start letting this happen because under that, they have no clue what the hell is going on, and they're also
Right.
still in that selfish phase where they think they're the only thing in the world that matters.
Yeah.
This is why I think, a parent class that teaches childhood develop, like the stages of childhood development, which is very established,
Yeah.
is important so that you actually understand, like, yeah, if your kid's doing this at this age, that's fine. Here's the milestones that you should be reaching. Forget what the CDC is saying. They're full of shit now.
Yeah.
But it's like that guy that was on Rogan. He's like, oh, dude, I was reading before I even went to kindergarten. Like, no problem, because my parents were teaching me. Hello.
Right.
0 to 5 is unless there's cognitive development. This is what I was just saying to my wife. It's 0 to 5 is your coding. So your genetics are, I'm programming on C++. I'm programming on Java. That's the genetics. That's how it determines. It kind of sets the boundaries of where you can work with this. And then 0 to 5 is I'm doing my coding. I'm programming it. And then, 6 to like preteen is beta. And then teenager, even though you're not cognitively fully there, that's like run program. And we'll bug fix as we go. That's how I kind of look at it.
Right.
So it's like 0 to 5, even if they can't articulate that they understand, is they're learning everything, they see everything, they know. Do they have an understanding of like stuff beyond what they can see? Not always. I think object permanence kicks in around age 2, where they can understand that something can exist even if you can't see it.
Right.
But they still don't understand less tangible things. There's an age, I forgot what age, 6, 7, or 8, or whatever, where you take the 2 water, right? And you
Right.
2 glasses, like say this, right?
Right.
They're both, let's say they're full of water, and then I take this glass, which is clearly different, and then I pour it into that. And you say, is this water and this water the same amount of water? And you'll know cognitively when they've developed, because then they'll say, of course it is. But until they hit that stage, they'll look at the size of the cup and decide whichever one is bigger.
Right.
And they'll say that one has more because the cup is bigger.
Right.
But once they can realize, well, the volume of water didn't change, then they've hit the next level of cognitive development, and they can start understanding less tangible ideas and concepts and philosophy.
Yeah.
So when you understand that, it's like, okay, the mistake of the West in education and in childhood early development is the idea that this is where you give some credit to the left about you can't measure everything. You need grades, but it can't all be about grades.
Yep.
Because the kids can't, and everyone's a little bit different, they can't actually articulate to you. But you need to treat them as if they are still learning, unless it's very obvious that they're not. Like if your kid's 5 and can't do round peg, round hole, you have a problem.
Yeah.
But it's that understanding that they are paying attention to everything, and now's the time to read to them. Now's the time to have music around them. Now's the time to actually talk to them. You can talk to them like adults. They won't get it. They won't get stuff. They'll be bored. Doesn't mean it's not getting in there.
Right.
Right. I was telling my wife that what I'd like to do, because we watch Netflix and I love that stuff. It's my like books and narrative. Is that, well, my wife's Chinese and kids learn from the languages at home. Well, I don't speak Mandarin, but I think it's very important for them to learn. So either I'm probably gonna have to learn some. I think I'm gonna struggle with that one. But an easy way to solve this problem is let's watch Chinese shows with subtitles, so at least the children is hearing this. And I said to her, you're probably gonna have to talk to them sometimes in Mandarin, or let them hear Mandarin conversations, so that their brain is picking up the grammatical structure. Right, even if they're not articulating it. And some kids get confused, but it's proven they need to hear different languages early, so that their brain can pick up all the different grammatical structure. Like I was watching, someone showed this newscaster he's covering the Ukraine thing, 5 different languages fluently.
I know, it's crazy.
And I was like,
the Europeans are crazy with that.
What the
They
hell?
know so
Because
many.
they just teach them early.
Yeah.
They just say you're going to learn these languages.
It's so valuable too. Because you get to, there's all different kinds of, because speaking is how you communicate and even develop thought, right? This is why we need freedom of speech, is to just let people, you were just saying earlier today, right? Like, let the crazy super intellectual types speak, because they're outlandish and they're way out there, but like that's how they actually get shit done.
Yeah.
And for the rest of us too, it's because, hold on, okay, that was a really weird idea you just said.
Yeah.
And so language allows you to express things in different ways. If you know, like, I mean, reading the Bible, for instance, in the Greek or Hebrew versus English, it's like, whoa, the words aren't actually there when it's not translated. It's not there. And when I look at this English translation, we've had to like insert this word here in order to make sense. Otherwise, it's like not. It completely makes no sense in English. Like you have no thes or
Yeah.
us or whatever it
Yeah.
is, right? So
And there's also colloquial. Like,
yeah,
does it mean what we think it means?
exactly, right?
Because it probably
Exactly,
doesn't.
exactly, right.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of cultural. Like for instance, what I learned recently, this kind of blew my mind. Was that like the sacrificial system in the Old Testament?
Mm.
We read that in English, in a North American Western context,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, they're sacrificing it. They're sacrificing those animals as a way for to appease God and be to take their place, right, of God's anger.
Yeah.
But really, actually, what they're doing is essentially they're creating like a peace meal,
Yeah.
right? It's like it's actually like we're God and us are going to eat this meal together.
Yeah.
So it's not so there's that nuance there, right? And but it totally changes the way that you might interpret it
Yeah.
because it's like, oh, this is an angry God we're dealing with versus a God who wants
Yeah.
to be intimate and part of our family,
You know, it's
right?
funny. Guilty pleasure. I'm watching Love Is Blind.
Yeah.
Have you heard of this show?
No.
It's
Oh,
interesting.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, I
yeah.
have actually. Yes.
So we watched
Yes.
season 2 of the North American version, and
Yeah.
then the newer episodes aren't out yet because they're doing the stupid weekly thing. And so I was bored, so we put on the Japanese version of Love Is Blind. And
Okay. Is
watching,
it like a Japanese game show thing or
no,
something?
no, no, it's similar structure,
Okay, okay.
similar
Yeah, yeah,
structure, and it's just watching the mating process, the
yeah.
exact same
Huh.
format
Whoa.
with the two different cultures. One, you'll appreciate
It's
the
weird.
editing style is different
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
show. It's the same format, but the editing style of building the storytelling is
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
So in the North American version, they basically, have a few episodes where they're showing all the different relationships, and of course, the most dramatic ones get the most screen time and all this sort of stuff. And then at the
Right.
very end, they edit it where okay, now the reveal of all the people that proposed, and then the holiday.
Okay.
Well, in the Japanese version, the first few episodes, each episode is sort of more dedicated to one or two relationships specifically, and at the end of each episode, someone will propose. So there's the
Okay.
editing difference,
Right.
which is interesting, and the storytelling. But then it's the communication between the couples. Now, I know a little bit about Japanese culture. I did study it when I was younger. I've been to Japan. Japanese as a language is very direct,
Yeah.
very to the point.
Yeah.
And English is,
I don't think are there hypotheticals in Japanese? I've
meaning,
heard
what do you mean by that?
oh like would have,
Not as much. I'm not.
right?
I'm not very good at the language, but they're
Yeah.
just a very direct. And it actually comes out because one of the guys spent time in America, and he was talking with one of these people, and he actually said like, "Oh, you speak English?" They were talking English for a bit, and he's like, "I want to hear how you express this in English," because he's acknowledging
Hmm.
subtly that English is more expressive.
It is
And so he wanted to hear
far more
emotions. He
nuanced.
wanted to hear it
Yeah.
in English. So they're
Yeah.
talking in fluent English. And
Yeah.
at one point, they're like, I think we should be talking Japanese because someone probably told him, stop,
Oh,
stop,
that's
stop
interesting.
speaking English. But they were fluent. And it was just, but the questions in the Japanese one were like, what do you do for a living? Like, how do you
Yeah.
see your like right to the point, like matchmaking.
Yes.
And the English one is just like shooting a shit and
Yeah.
making
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
jokes and
Yeah.
screwing around.
Yeah.
And I
Totally.
I actually thought that the Japanese people understood a little bit better of what it meant to be in a good relationship and what you
Hmm.
should be looking for. And also, several of the women were divorced, and they were
Hmm.
very hesitant to bring that up because I'm gonna go with
Of
in
the
culture.
Japanese woman.
Yeah, it's not.
Huh.
You don't talk about that. It's frowned upon.
Huh.
Versus North America, like, yeah, I was divorced, it was a mess,
Yeah.
whatever. And it's just even some of the guys are like, yeah, I got married. There'll be like certain things. One guy has tattoos because it's Japan. He's like, do tattoos bother you? Because
Right.
the answer is no. Well, the guy's tatted up, which traditionally is a frowned upon and still traditional. But a lot of these young, they're more open minded. Are like, no, that's fine. And just watching the two different versions of the same. I hear there's a Love Is Blind Brazil too.
Right.
And it's like I kind of want to watch that one now because it's like to see the same reasonable format play across culturally. The drama is different, the editing is different, and the questions and the mechanism of how they behave is different. Like North American ones are like, "Did you sleep with him yet?" And the
Yeah.
Japanese, they're not talking about that.
Wow.
Not at all. But it's just that should show you cultural awareness. It's like
Yeah.
same thing, different approach,
Yeah.
similar but different.
Yeah.
So can you watch it and pick up the nuances and read the differences between the two?
Right.
It's tricky.
Well, I mean, even just on language, like English is a composition of so many other languages, right? which is why we have like at least two words for the same thing.
Yeah.
But what we're really doing,
Metaphors and
yeah,
similes.
yeah. But what we're really doing is we're creating so much so much room for nuance in our speech. Like, so people say like, "Oh, English is like the hardest, dumbest language to learn."
Yeah.
Well, no, it's just because there's so much room for nuance,
Yeah.
right? Because you could say the same thing in so many different ways, and if you really get to the etymology of each word in that sentence, it's like
It's
you
hard,
you could be
not
saying
hard.
something slightly different, and
Yeah.
that kind of malleability is not available in most. Well, actually, I'll say any other language.
Russian, maybe I don't
Yeah,
know much about
I'm
Russian,
not a
but
language
yeah,
expert.
but
I'm just
that's actually something because you see all the literature, the classical
yeah.
Russian literature. It's like, oh, they have nuance.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They
I'm not
do,
saying nuance doesn't exist.
yeah,
I'm just saying nuance doesn't exist in the languages I've
yeah.
seen.
Compared to
That
other languages, yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
The languages I think that were allowed to evolve naturally and are much more nuanced than the much more
Yeah.
structured, like
Well,
Hebrew,
yeah,
modern Hebrew. It's not nuanced. They
right,
have to add a lot of English or Arab words to
right.
add flavor to it
And
because it
that,
was
yeah,
created in like the 1800s. Modern Hebrew,
yeah,
very simple, structured grammatically. They're like, "Oh,
yeah,
Hebrew's the hardest thing to learn." I'm like, grammatically, no, it's actually really
right.
simple language, and the average vocabulary in Hebrew for a conversation is a lot lower than the average vocabulary in a
Yeah,
lot other languages. Like
yeah.
you start, that's why they throw English in and they throw the stuff
I'm
in.
going to be learning modern Hebrew soon,
Yeah,
actually. Modern Hebrew, modern Greek, and I'm actually right now I'm beginning to learn Latin.
yeah, that's so modernly useful.
Well,
Useful for you, but
for when because I'll be going into a PhD program at some time in my life as
yeah.
soon as possible, and a lot of schools they want you
You
to
think you're
know.
better than me,
Yeah, yeah,
doctor?
yeah. Well, it's funny, but I've been told I've had so many interviews with so many professional academics, and they say, the language thing, it's not that big of a deal anymore. It's like,
I think that's bullshit
yeah,
because I think for you to truly, if you want to be a globalist person, you need to understand the nuances, at least understand how the language
yeah,
works so you
yeah,
can realize there's a miscommunication
yeah.
issue going on.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't require you to be able to be fluent. They just need you to understand the basic grammar and
Of Latin?
of
Or
any of you can pick an assortment of ancient of dead and alive
yeah,
languages basically, and as long as you are able to with a dictionary beside you
yeah,
read
yeah,
and understand,
yeah.
then that's
If
suitable.
you understand the language
But I'd
even a
like to be
little,
able to speak
yeah,
fluently.
of course.
Yeah,
If you understand the language even a little bit, you understand the culture a lot better because it
yeah,
actually alters how you think and perspective and people who don't, a lot of these Karens don't speak another language. They're just like bored white suburb
yeah,
people or rich like Nancy Pelosi, like God just retire, you like zombie. Um, they don't like that's actually one of the things they got wrong about Russia is like you see how Trump handled it and you see how the Democrats handled it
yeah.
and the joke the meme I saw was under Obama Crimea invaded, under Trump under under Biden, Ukraine invaded.
Right,
Like
right.
because he went to them and he even though like Trump speaks like a fool to be honest, the
Oh,
way he talks,
absolutely.
but he understands.
Putin thought he was a crazy person who was ready to do anything
Yeah,
at
and
any
you know what?
moment.
That's
You don't
enough.
mess with
Which
someone like
basically
that.
showed Putin has his lines that he won't cross. If
Yeah,
he thinks this is going to go to full out war, he wasn't going to do it.
right.
Is basically the message. Trump probably in private said, "I will do it. Don't fuck with me." And
Yeah,
Putin's like,
yeah,
"Yeah, he will."
yeah. Exactly.
Versus Obama and Biden, he's like, "Yeah, you gonna move your red line again, idiot?
Yeah,
Come at me, bro." He's
yeah,
not stupid,
yeah,
right? And I feel bad for the Ukrainians, but I'm just like, when you really understand the culture and the geopolitics and the strongman, like, we have to negotiate. They don't respect that. It's like on Klingon, okay? If I don't punch him in the face and show him how strong and fearless I am, he's gonna go to war with me. I
yeah.
punched the Klingon in the face. Don't slap them. That's a war declaration of war. But I punched him. He'd be like,
Right.
"Ah, man, you're strong. Like, oh, we won't go to war." That's how a lot of these guys' cultures work.
Yeah.
If they think you're weak, they'll eat you alive, and you're actually applying Western ideologies to cultures that's not how they think.
No.
And then you're calling the people who are saying, "Hey, that's not how they think," racist, even though some of those people might actually understand the culture better than you, Karen. Like,
Yeah.
it's just like you can't you play. They're more like direct. They sense weakness and they'll
Right.
attack.
Yeah.
right?
People don't understand, like, it's not that they think the way you do, but they just have a different opinion. No, like, they literally think differently than you do. They think they have a different philosophy about how one should think
Yeah.
differently than you,
So
right?
moral
It's like
relativism a little bit.
it's
So, for example,
yeah.
Putin. If you, well, actually, any topic, you look at a historian on the same exact historical event from different countries, and their perspectives are similar but different enough that you're like, huh.
Hmm.
Like I was watching some of these historical, talking about other cultures, and in Japan and or in other places, and you hear, or a World War II document, one of those World War II in color thing, and when you hear the German historians talking about it,
Yeah.
they're not like, oh, Hitler did nothing wrong. They're not like that. Obviously, they're like,
Mm.
of course he's a maniac, but the way they're approaching the historical event is different. And you have to hear these things. It's like when you hear about Putin, you talk to the average Russian, they love him.
Hmm.
Outside of St. Petersburg and Moscow, you have two
Hmm.
metropolitan places. That's where the academic elites are. That's where a lot of his resistance is. But what people forget is after the fall of the Soviet Union, it was chaos. The mobsters ran stuff. Former KGB people were doing all. And you had a few presidents for a while, but until Putin came back in and took control,
Hmm.
it was chaos. So a lot of people, and I'm like, man, those days in between the fall of the Soviet Union and Putin were not good.
How long has Putin been in
20
office for?
20 years, 30, because the full fall was
Wow.
like Berlin
I
Wall,
can't
what?
imagine that.
Yeah, like 89 Berlin Wall, 91 full collapse, I guess, give or take. And then early 2000s he took over.
Wow.
So like 10 years without Putin was chaos, and a lot of people remember that chaos. But as in, in a
Yeah.
North American perspective, is communism bad? Which it is. It doesn't work, guys. Stop trying it.
Yeah.
No, it's
No.
not because you didn't do it right. It just doesn't work because
No.
of human nature.
Yeah.
Um
It's been tried and proven
so
wrong.
on the right, they're like communism, Russia. Okay, if the Cold War era mentality needs to stop from everybody.
Hmm.
The Republicans were doing it forever, and then the Democrats started doing it. The Russian boogeyman, the Russian boogeyman, Russian boogeyman. I think he just wants to be respected and to respect the fact that America doesn't there. And also, I think he's sick of the World Economic Forum and all these globalist idiots.
Right. Putin is sick of it.
Yeah, you stay
Interesting.
out of my country,
Yeah.
motherfuckers. Basically,
Yeah.
like that's his thing.
I love that.
Now he is a dictator. He is an
Yeah.
authoritarian. Um, and there are certain topics that they don't tolerate, like they're not very friendly to the
No,
homosexuality in there
no.
at all, or other stuff. So if you're like pro-gay marriage, therefore everything he does, but go talk to the average Russians. A lot of them don't culturally like that.
Right.
Now, as long as Putin is like, oh, if you're gay, you can leave. Now, from a Western perspective, it's like, no, that's evil. But it's as long if he's like, listen, we don't like it here, but you can leave the country and go somewhere else.
Right.
Well, that's very different than we're going to kill you,
Totally.
right?
Totally.
But people can't see the nuanced difference between the two.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them leave.
Yeah.
Some of them don't, a lot of them do.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not fair. Well, it's like, isn't that the advantage of having a quote globalized world is you can leave if you want to.
Yeah.
Right now, that's where we get into the politics of Americans' borders. Like, I do think government should have the right to say you can and cannot come into this country.
Absolutely. Exactly.
Immigration is good. Let me clarify
Yeah.
that, but it needs to
Yeah.
be controlled and
No.
be reasonable. I don't believe in just free flow, no borders, no integration,
No.
nothing, because now your country is no longer going to be what
And
it
culture
was.
doesn't exist.
Yeah.
You need to be able to keep certain people out and keep certain people in.
Hey, you're a criminal. We don't want you here.
Yeah,
Sorry. You
exactly.
committed how many murders? Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope. We don't want you
Yeah.
here.
Or you don't believe in private property. You
Yeah.
don't believe in free speech.
Yeah.
You don't believe that the family unit is the core of civilization and that citizens give people the power
Which,
instead
by the way,
of top down.
that's not just a Western value. That was everywhere.
Yeah.
The family unit,
Yeah.
historically.
However, the thing with Black Lives Matter is originally on their website, their excuse for
They're a Marxist group.
they saw these things as white ideas.
Yeah.
Therefore, they need to be taken away. Your free speech is a white idea. Your free market capitalism is a white idea. I mean, sure, maybe that is. Like it was the reformers in Europe that invented capitalism. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure, you got us on that one. Okay, but is that therefore a bad idea?
Well,
No,
I was having a
right?
discussion with a native friend of mine briefly. He's, very smart guy, very educated, and he changed my mind a little bit about what's going on in natives in Canada. I don't hear about it, and he made some arguments that were really good. But he's like, the white man. He didn't say it like this, but
Right.
he's much more articulate than that. He's a white man, is warlike and all this, and they've history of wars are far more violent. Even though he admits, yes, the natives used to kill each other for resource wars. So I'm like, good, at
Yeah.
least you're
Yeah.
being historically accurate. The noble savage is a lie. Like, come on.
Right.
But I said to him, for whatever reason, the natives in North America just didn't develop technology fast enough.
Right.
And I said that's the only difference. I fully believe that
Only difference.
had natives
We had a
developed,
bigger stick.
yeah, we had a bigger stick. Had natives developed technology, they would have done the exact same thing
Absolutely.
because we're all human.
There's no virtue in lack of progress.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm uncomfortable even saying that because it's just it amounts to a different set of values, right?
Yeah.
Like we in Europe, we valued competition and like outsourcing each other and capitalizing, and like this is all developing as we approach the later Middle Ages, right? And then but that just wasn't the culture in elsewhere in the world,
It's
right?
like Genghis
Which is
Khan
fine.
was not Western and had one of the biggest empires ever because at the time his warfare technology was better.
Yep.
There's the recurve bow the ability to come in en masse on horseback and just go crazy like they did with the ability. They basically had at that what would have been modern day tanks,
Yeah.
if you think about it. Giant
Yeah.
horses, the ability to shoot off the horse full speed mid stride, run through crowds of people, even shielded people,
Yeah.
move
Incredible
faster than
force.
everyone en masse. Because up until then, the Western armies were marching on foot. Had he not got shot with an arrow, it's a good chance he would have swept Europe too.
Wow.
But he got to the edge of Europe, and he got injured and had to retreat, and then it was never the same because that was their momentum.
Right.
And then they started building their empire, the Silk Road, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they're no longer warrior, so they didn't have the ability to maintain their huge borders back then anymore, and it fell apart.
Yeah.
But he's Asian. He had the biggest empire ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's technology. It's not white man. It's people aren't thinking broad enough.
Yeah.
Imagine what would have happened if he swept Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, he just had better warfare technology, but in many ways, overall, their technology wasn't that much better.
And even what he did, I think he's spawned now a third of the whole world.
I don't know
right?
if it's a third.
Whatever
A
it
large
is,
percentage,
right?
yeah.
Like it's crazy. But like I think we also need to get away from this idea that like so this is where I make right-wing people angry.
Mhm.
Is that I'm not convinced like on a moral basis if um acquiring wealth and giving nullifying all forms of poverty is a good thing necessarily.
Wait,
So I think if when because I've traveled a bit,
Mhm.
I've been to really poor places,
Mhm.
and they're really happy. Like they're getting by, and they're sometimes starving,
Mhm.
and they don't live comfortable lives, but they have tight families,
Mhm.
and they're not comparing them. They don't live in all this anxiety that we've built up for ourselves. So it's like what I notice in like when we try to westernize a lot of other cultures, it's like we're bringing all of this like capitalist anxiety into those worlds, and now they're comparing
Well, it's
themselves.
like you want to bring them knowledge and let them
Right.
kind of work with it.
Do what they want with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So education will solve most problems, but it's ground up from the household upward, as I said before.
Yeah.
They need the fundamentals, and then you kind of let them do their thing. But what happens is we'll give you education if
Right.
we'll do this
Yeah.
if,
Yeah.
and that's not specific to the West, and people need to stop saying that. That's
Mm.
specific to anyone who wants more resources. Because if
Mm.
you think about everything is just about resource allocation, right? And the communist ideology is, well, the resources are distributed equally, but that just doesn't seem to work for whatever reason. Maybe it is a universal bell curve model that some people will be better and will have more, some people will have less. Not better as in they're better human, just better
Mhm.
at acquiring resources.
Mhm.
And a lot of people, I'm sorry, are not capable. They're just
Yeah.
not.
No, it's true.
They're just not. Now, you will have more violence and you will have a worse time when you cram people together in poverty. Ghettoization, bad. Cramming people with lower education and nothing to do, bad. It will create a violent thing, which is counter to what the goals of, say religion was trying to do, is reduce that collective violence. So, first of all, when you have to accept a few things. Not everyone is good at stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are better. You just need to accept that. You shouldn't treat everyone like crap. Like, I did make an observation about the States and here, is I noticed that poor people here, or people living on the streets, homeless people, are a lot better off here than in the States.
Yeah.
Because they can go get medical treatment.
Yeah.
And I noticed, as a general rule, they're far less violent because they're getting some help than in the States. They're very aggressive. I found homeless people in the States very aggressive, like mentally ill homeless, very aggressive. Whether because they're in pain, whether because they're hungry, whether because they need meds. Well, they get that here. Still living on the streets, which is a whole different problem. So you do need some level of like, okay, this group of people is just, for whatever reason, home life, mental state, not capable. And we want to take care of them so that they're not living in squalor on the downtown east side, because that's not good for anybody.
Mm-hmm.
When you start thinking like a progressive, well, they're human beings too. They can do what they want. No. I have no problem building a camp with washroom facilities and heat and stuff for them to go there. But they need to go there. And two things are going to happen is they're probably going to trash the place without, how do you make it without being a prison if they're just going to trash the place? And how do you make it so that they get the resources they need? Some people just can't live on their own. So you need to help these people. You cannot say they need help, but they need to be able to run around doing whatever they want. That's what progressives are saying. That's not how this works.
Yeah.
So you do need, some people need the support, but this, everyone else, it's like,
I want to respond to one of your first premises there, which is that it's in places where there's more densely impoverished people that creates more violence. Is that what you?
it is on the basis that even without in poverty, there's a higher energy. So people actually, they've measured that people walk faster in a place like New York than they do in rural towns. So it's a collective energy thing. So if you take it from a universal perspective, you know, the energy and the poverty and the desperation will create, even if it's small violence, it will get worse.
Okay, so I want to counter that with what I've seen and heard, you know, people even like Jordan Peterson talk about. Where it's not poverty per se, but it's rather poverty in the midst of disparity, difference, right? Where you have a impoverished population amidst and surrounded by a wealthy population, right? That actually is what creates more violence.
Which is true, because it's, the violence often happens on the fringes a lot. Like, if people think New York has been violent for a long time, that New York ghettoized itself historically with Jews living here, blacks living here, Irish living here. And I remember someone saying that the violence happened on the fringes where there's cultural differences. Because it's territorial, it's same sort of thing. So, and if we go back to sort of a physics, or like high pressure to low pressure, high pressure to low pressure, everything moves like that.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't have, it's like, I want, they want to boil over, and they see, and then that everyone wants to always naturally balance it out. But you have to remember, true balance is zero, and that equals nothing. So this idea that everything equals out and we all have the same, it fails, because that's just not how this universe works at any level.
Yeah.
Right. So again, you want to bring up the worst, but then you want to encourage people, everyone is able to do the best. How do you do that? You give everyone the problem solving skills early, education early. Some people are, sorry, not that smart. They're just not going to do it. Some people will excel. Everyone should be productive, but they need the skills.
Right.
And they need, what I find, capitalism, one of the biggest issues is actually progressive red tape. We need more rules and regulations. And it's gotten to the point where that actually makes capitalism and free market fail, because I can't do anything on my own merit anymore. I need permission. I need this. I need that. I need these fees. I need this license. Now, you do want some level of that, so people aren't being crazy killing people. It's like the cost of living in Vancouver. Like 1/3 of the property, the housing cost, is because of red tape and paperwork and standards and this and that. And it's to the point of absurdity now. That's not helpful.
No.
And And they say this is now they're finally admitting. I mean, yes, foreign ownership is an issue, and I can make examples where rich people from one area are going to another buying up property causes a problem. So people need to stop pretending like that's not a thing. But they also have a supply issue. People aren't building enough. Well, why aren't people building enough? You don't think builders don't want to make money building stuff and selling it? They'd love to. So why don't they? There's no incentive.
Right.
Too much red tape. Well, if I build these rental units for you, it's a pain in the ass. So I don't want to build these rental units for you because then I have to manage it. And guess what? You dickheads have given tenant rights to the point where a tenant can burn down your property. This is extreme hyperbole.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
I've had tenant issues.
And arbitrarily.
The tenants can act like lunatics, wreck your goddamn property. So why the hell would anyone want to have a building, manage it, and have tenants who have zero responsibility for taking care of this property at my expense?
Yeah.
Why would I want to do that?
Yeah. Our landlords, it's funny, we have a good relationship with them. But they said like, yeah, like you guys are the first couple that's like
Not wrecking the
been
place.
awesome.
Yeah.
And so after you guys leave, which is whenever you want, we're not gonna rent it out to anyone.
And it's to the point where you've made it. I don't want to rent to anyone anymore. It's such a nightmare.
Yeah.
Actually, use Airbnb because it protects you.
Right.
Rent through Airbnb. So all these don't allow Airbnb rentals in apartments is like that was a terrible. That was the way people got legal and financial protection from bad tenants through a third party. It's basically rental insurance if you use Airbnb. They pay a lot of money every year for damaged property. It's actually insane. So as an renter, I'm screwed if there's any problems.
Right.
The renter has all the rights, even if it's their fault. Oh, they don't pay? I have a mortgage to pay, dude. I can't kick them out? No.
Yeah.
And then, because my uncle used to be in property development, he was telling me back in like the 60s and 70s, you'd get like a doctor who has like disposable income and they could afford to build a 10 or 20 unit rental unit and hire a manager to run it. There was tax incentive to do so.
Wow.
And then they got rid of it, and they put all these rules and these regulations, and all of a sudden the only people who can build anything are billion-dollar companies. And why the hell would I want to build a rental unit that I now have to manage and deal with all this nonsense at my expense? Why do I want to do that? Right. So now the cities are just bribing people. Like, you want to build your tower there, it's got to have this, which is a middle ground. You got to have some rental units and commercial, and you got to have this. And they're like, hey, we'll give you the permits to build if. But you see, that permit it's like a barrier now. Yeah. Because in order for me to deal with the permitting process, I also need a shit ton of money. So if I don't have a shit ton of money already, I can't even build the rental units that I want to build. Yeah. Because I need all these permits and all these rules and all these regulations. Yeah. And that's the part of the left and the political ideology like the NDP in Canada is they're too much for government control. It's like, you guys need to get out of the way because guess what? Government is not good at doing stuff. No. You need to let people who are capable do it. And your job as the government is to act as an arbitrator. Hey, no, you cannot pollute the river. Well, why not? Because you can't. It's affecting everything around it. You can't do that. If you do that, your company can't operate here anymore. Right. That's their job.
And control what foreign influences are coming in and raising prices for us too.
Also, I think government one of their jobs should be preventing private industry monopolies. Yeah. I'm okay with that. Break up monopolies.
They end up making them.
Yeah, in BC with that stupid insurance company. It's like, it's an absurd. I'm so against monopoly. I don't care what you are. For the nature, we need the variety for progress to happen.
I almost don't care what, as a provincial candidate, whoever you are, if
get rid of ICBC as a monopoly.
If you have anything on your agenda, and I don't believe in it, but you plan on getting rid of ICBC, I'm voting for you.
Here's the thing. This is how this argument goes. But if it's not a monopoly, it will fail. What? Then it's not a good model. Then that means you were running it like shit before, and you kept running it like shit, like CBC. You're running it like shit. You're doing stuff nobody wants. It's gonna fail. Well, that's why we have to have a monopoly. Or you change how you're running it.
I've never heard that. I've never heard anyone say that.
It's why this stuff fails. Because as soon as you open it up to people who are more capable, and then they'll say, well, we can't afford to pay the best people to come here because the taxpayer and voter won't allow it. I'm like, well,
Hmm.
I'm okay because what does a taxpayer do? You're paying the executive how much?
Right.
Well, if you want the talent, you
Exactly.
got to pay the money.
90% of these fees, of our taxes, of what is in a budget for anything that the government, it has its hands in,
Yeah.
it's all administration.
It's
Like,
all
it's
bloated nonsense.
it's
People who don't know
nonsense.
what they're doing
I
anyway.
I used to sell paint at a paint store, and we would have city contractors,
Yeah.
right, come in like would paint lines in the street, and it's like, I know how much that barrel of paint costs. It's
Yeah.
like $90,
Yeah.
right? And they're going to use that whole barrel of $90 paint to paint the street, and they're charging like $15,000 or something. Like, it's ridiculous the way that people can get away with, because they know that even if the government is your client, right?
Yeah.
Even if the government is
Oh,
your
they're conning the
client,
system. Yeah.
you can just it's an infinite pool of
Yeah,
money
it's
almost.
it's because the government workers are not good at what they do and don't know what anything is worth, and they
Yeah.
get conned. Now, some of it is intentional. Trudeau and his allegedly all his people are just fucking money laundering our taxpayer dollars to their friends.
Yeah.
Which needs to be stopped. But it's just like you're hiring people who don't know what they're doing, don't understand the value of anything, and are like, yeah, that seems about reasonable. Like, and I've had people quote me insane shit for stuff. I'm like, I don't think it should cost that much because
Yeah.
I've done it before, and I'm like, I kind of know what costs should be.
Right.
What I forget. I've had these situations
Sure.
happening, and it's just like governments becomes a mediocrity that's built on trying to just maintain itself, and they keep hiring mediocre people who want good quality people go to the private industry because it pays more, and the government can't pay people to get the talent because then they don't show up, or then the taxpayer yells at them and like, what are you doing? And it's this vicious cycle of just everyone has no clue what the hell's going on and what they're doing, and then it just ends up in squalor and destruction because the whole system collapses due to incompetence, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, I don't know about you, I'm getting a little tired from talking for so long.
You know what? It's perfect timing, because
Yeah.
I think I got to go pick up my wife now.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
literally perfect.
So, as a proud member of a small fringe minority,
That's
is there
right.
any last things that you wanted to put out there? I mean, we can't go into too much detail because you got to go pick up your wife, but
Sure.
anything you would want to get in?
Yeah. Well, if I may have a short monologue, this is a momentous time in Canadian history and in world history, frankly, because we are shedding the facade of our globalist, shadow alliance that's happening around the world with the World Economic Forum, etc. All because some dumb, uneducated, top of the bell curve, normal ass people decided to drive big loud trucks and honk their big loud horns. And so I would say, please, the first thing everyone should do is to really sit down and think about what makes you you. Who are you? What are you? What does it mean to be you and to fulfill those things? I think freedom is essential for that. And you need to hold everybody who puts themselves above you, or whoever you put above yourself, to those standards of allowing you to be exactly who you are, because it's exactly who they are, a human being. So be free and take advantage of this opportunity. I'm so tired of people sitting in the background and watching things happen, because how real change occurs is when you actually do something. And yeah, you're just one person, but what you do is you speak up. Now you have like a few other people listening to you, and they feel like, oh, that person believes what I believe. I'm not alone. So they start to feel the way you feel. When you have that feeling, oh, I'm not alone in this, and you start speaking out, other people feel that too. And so now all of a sudden you have thousands and hundreds of thousands of people on Parliament Hill or in Washington, D.C., because, we've finally broken through. It's taken a long time for Canada, but we've finally broken through, and no one needs to feel alone anymore. You're not, your views of freedom are not idiotic. They're not unimportant, and we need to take advantage and ride the wave. So do what you can. If you're listening to this and you are looking around the world and you don't like what's going on, it's just as simple as speaking up. Just speak up. I know it takes courage, but it's time to develop that courage, no matter who you are. And just a plug, I have a podcast of my own where I get into more so of the Catholic stuff. I'm a studying graduate in theological studies, going on to do a PhD afterwards. But I don't like things in the theological world to be super high up and academic and staunch or whatever. I like to get cultural with it. I add some, real down to earth, millennial, generational kind of humor to things. The point is to kind of bring all of the cool theology of the Catholic Church down to our level. It's not just for high and mighty academics to sit around and smoke a cigar and drink some whiskey and ha ha ha. No, like we can actually apply this stuff to our lives. And so my podcast is small. It's just starting up, but it's called Good Sheep. And the reason I'll say this too, I say Good Sheep because it's kind of like ironic where I don't want to be a sheep of the world. I want to be a sheep of Christ. He's my shepherd. Right, this is part of the cringe that I'm getting at here. Yeah. So anyways, so just you can look me up on YouTube or Apple Podcasts, Good Sheep. I'm also on TikTok. And
Traitor.
I know. And on TikTok is where it's super niche. If you're into the idea of Catholic theological comedy, super niche.
Yes.
Super niche. So
like
that's
Christian rock.
That's it. Yeah. Christian rock. Yeah. Well, that's on TikTok. There you go. So just look me up on Good Sheep and I'll see you there.
What's your TikTok handle?
Good Sheep 94. Good Sheep 94.
Do you want your other Instagram out there? You're keeping that?
No, you can do. Oh, and as far as it's not my Instagram, but I'm a contributor to the BC Border Alliance on Instagram. Right now, we're just waiting to see what happens with when it comes to Ottawa and even our local BC convoy. So not much activity right now, just because of the week-long invocation of the Emergencies Act. But when I am down there, I am a contributor to that BC Border Alliance. So if you want to see the raw footage that is happening, on the ground at any of our local Vancouver Lower Mainland protests, that's the account to follow for that on Instagram, BC Border Alliance.
Cool. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Super fun.
To understand that the small fringe minority isn't just a bunch of dumb idiots.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for listening to the Warriors Den podcast. If you like this podcast and our content, make sure you support us in the many various ways you can. The easy and free ways start with liking, subscribing, following, and leaving a positive review wherever you may be listening or watching.
You're listening to The Warriors Den. Brought to you by Urban Tactics Krav Maga. Turning lambs into lions.